We are Newsroom. Hello, welcome from Johannesburg here in South Africa. My name, of course, Evan Jansen. This show, as always, is live, broadcast from our studios right here in Auckland Park between 9 and 12. Every weekday morning, you can watch us back on demand on this same channel. Today's question, well, a surprising development last night. The finance minister was replaced here in South Africa. Today, we ask you the question, what do you make of the sudden departure? At SABC Newsroom, that's where you can send us your contribution. Time for us now to get a news update with Elvis Presley.
Thank you, Evan. The rand plummets against international currencies after last night's sudden announcement of removing the finance minister, Nene, from his portfolio. Sindisiwe Mangele is expected to apply for bail in the High Court sitting in Randburg. And mixed reaction to the final draft of the climate change agreement released at the COP21 conference in Paris last night. Those are all your headlines, but first let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports field. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Elvis, and thank you very much, and a very hearty good morning to you at home as well. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
Chance again, a shot coming into the back of the net.
South Africa's under-23s were well beaten by an organised Algeria, denting their hopes for automatic qualification to Rio 2016. And the Blues advanced to the round of 16 as Group G winners with a 2-0 victory over Porto, keeping trouble manager Jose Mourinho in his job.
A goal that surely sends Chelsea through to the knockout stages of the Champions League.
This is Tyson Fury loses his IBF World Heavyweight belt over Vladimir Klitschko rematch clause.
Both of them raise their arms aloft. Klitschko feels he's done enough. To the winner by you.
And that in a nutshell is what we've got for you. At 10:20 or so, we'll be doing the sports. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Our top story this hour. The rand plummeted against international currencies after last night's sudden announcement that President Jacob Zuma has removed the finance minister, Nene, from his portfolio. The rand broke through the 15 rand a dollar and 23 rand a pound level. Nene is to be replaced by the ANC NP and whip of the Standing Committee on Finance, David van Rooyen. The president said he had decided to remove Nene as Minister of Finance ahead of his deployment to another strategic position.
I've decided to remove Mr. Nene as Minister of Finance ahead of his deployment to another strategic position. Mr. Nene has done well since his appointment as Minister of Finance during a difficult economic climate. Mr. Nene enjoys a lot of respect in the sector, locally and abroad, having also served as a Deputy Minister of Finance previously. I've decided to appoint a Member of Parliament, Mr. David van Rooyen, as the new Minister of Finance. Mr. van Rooyen serves as a whip of the Standing Committee on Finance and as whip of the Economic Transformation Cluster. He is a former executive mayor of Merafong Municipality and a former Northwest Provincial Chairperson of the South African Local Government Association. I wish Mr. van Rooyen all the best in this new deployment.
Some MPs have reacted with shock to the axing of Nene. They've described the president's decision as reckless, saying David van Rooyen will have his work cut out for him.
David van Rooyen, the new finance minister, served as the whip in the Standing Committee on Finance and in the Economic Transformation Cluster. He is also the former executive mayor of Merafong Municipality and the former chairperson of the South African Local Government Association in the Northwest. Van Rooyen, a former MK operative, boasts among his qualifications an MSc Finance in Economic Policy, which was conferred on him by the University of London last year. Despite this, DA leader Mmusi Maimane said in a statement that the appointment of Van Rooyen gives no assurance that the country's economy is in safe hands. Equally scathing in his reaction was EFF's Mbuyiseli Ndlozi, who described the new finance minister as unknown and inexperienced. The UDM says Van Rooyen has his work cut out for him.
Well, with all due respect to my former colleague in the finance portfolio, we feel that a person who would actually be able to take up that position must first deputize, like what happened with Finance Minister Nene. He hasn't had the opportunity to learn the ropes of how to do the job. So I think he's being set up to actually fail.
Vuyani Green, SABC News, Parliament.
Very much, House Chair.
Some economic analysts are also surprised at the decision to replace the finance minister. We spoke to the economist at Investment Solutions, Chris Hart, earlier this morning.
The decision was strange because Nene has not been in the position for long and has actually generated quite a lot of confidence in himself and the ministry while he's there. He obviously brings a lot of institutional memory. He was Deputy Minister of Finance before that, and of course he took over Pravin Gordhan's shoes and now being pushed out for an unknown. And when I say unknown, from a point of view of the financial markets perspective, the new minister is not known. So I really do wish him well because he's got a lot of work to actually gain, for the markets to gain confidence in him quite quickly because it needs to be settled down. The rand's dynamic is interesting because with the downgrade by S&P to a negative outlook, now you've got the prospect of a credit rating downgrade. This comes at a critical stage of our economy. That downgrade takes us into junk status. So immediately you've got a dynamic in the financial markets where the normal natural inflows now are more hesitant because, what if there's a downgrade? And of course there's the possibility of some funds preempting a possible downgrade by starting to lighten their load in South Africa. And we sit with a current account deficit that is quite big that needs to be funded.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the government's deficit itself needs to be funded. And when the rand weakens, the bond yields rise, which, of course, raises the government financing, and you can get into a negative spiral.
As a shockwave reverberated through the markets, yesterday President Jacob Zuma announced that replacement of Nene as the finance minister by David Van Rooyen, a former Marafong municipality mayor and a current member of parliament. Let's take a look at your tweets and what you have to say about this. Remember that you can send us your views on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Let's take a look at some of your comments here on the question that we also posed to you this morning. Let's take a look if we can find some of those tweets. This one here from Pablo Escobar says that Nhlanhla Nene has quickly earned trust from the markets. That was previously Scarlet Overkill says, rewind of the day of Nhlanhla Nene's appointment in 2014. What was your opinion of him? Did you think he was the best candidate then? That's a question there from Scarlet. Well, if you can look at his performance over 18 months, Scarlet, then you should be guided by that. Quanella says, by the way, who is this David Van Rooyen to replace Nhlanhla Nene? Have we gone insane? Well, that's and this one from Lindiwe says Nhlanhla Nene falls again. We don't want to go into that one, would we? Now there goes our rand, says Wendy Sekwadi, and you saw the rand tumble and recovered slightly this morning. These are some of your comments. Remember that you can send us your views. We're asking you the question this morning: how do you view the sudden replacement of the finance minister, Nhlanhla Nene? I'd like to get your thoughts on the Twitter page as well as on the Facebook page. But right now, that's all we have for you here at Newsroom for the news. Eben is standing by with more in-depth interviews and analysis.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elvis. Today we go a little bit back in time. It's exactly 2 years today since the memorial service for Nelson Mandela brought the world together here in South Africa. It's easy for some today to try and diminish what Nelson Mandela meant and did for South Africa. Mandela demonstrated that action and ideas were simply not enough anymore. No matter how right, they have to be chiseled into law and in institutions. Then we are free. That's what Nelson Mandela taught us. This is also how he was remembered by American President Barack Obama, who delivered one of his classic speeches on the 10th of December, 2013.
For the people of South Africa, for those he inspired around the globe, Madiba's passing is rightly a time of mourning and a time to celebrate a heroic life. But I believe it should also prompt in each of us a time for self-reflection. With honesty, regardless of our station or our circumstance, we must ask, how well have I applied his lessons in my own life? It's a question I ask myself as a man and as a president. We know that, like South Africa, the United States had to overcome centuries of racial subjugation. As was true here, it took sacrifice, the sacrifices of countless people, known and unknown, to see the dawn of a new day. Michelle and I are beneficiaries of that struggle. But in America and in South Africa and in countries all around the globe, we cannot allow our progress to cloud the fact that our work is not yet done. The struggles that follow the victory of formal equality or universal franchise may not be as filled with drama and moral clarity as those that came before, but they are no less important. For around the world today, we still see children suffering from hunger and disease. We still see rundown schools. We still see young people without prospects for the future. Around the world today, men and women are still imprisoned for their political beliefs and are still persecuted for what they look like and how they worship and who they love. That is happening today. And so we too must act on behalf of justice. We too must act on behalf of peace. There are too many people who happily embrace Madiba's legacy of racial reconciliation, but passionately resist even modest reforms that would challenge chronic poverty and growing inequality. There are too many leaders who claim solidarity with Madiba's struggle for freedom, but do not tolerate dissent from their own people. And there are too many of us on the sidelines, comfortable in complacency or cynicism, when our voices must be heard.
Powerful words on that day. Who can forget the day that the rain came and blessed us here, South Africa, while the world was here to come and say goodbye to Nelson Mandela, our icon. Of course, there were controversy after the speech itself. For the president himself, when the First Lady of the U.S., she wasn't very happy apparently about this specific picture that was taken at the FNB Stadium. The body language kind of tells it all. That is the Danish Prime Minister Helle Thorning-Schmidt, and of course David Cameron shoving his face in the selfie there. That's the one that caught the headlines pretty much for the week after that. Yeah, every man can get into trouble for that kind of thing, I suppose. Now, we stay with our Mandela Memorial today. Travellers passing through Cape Town International Airport will soon be greeted by a giant tapestry in memory of the global human rights defender. The giant design will be unveiled later today at the Cape Town International Airport, also to mark International Human Rights Day. That is today. The tapestry is entitled Flying Madiba, and it's designed by acclaimed Czech artist Peter Sis and woven by Atelier Pinto in Aubusson in France. It's approximately 6 by 3 meters big. It will be displayed in the meeters and greeters area of the International Arrivals Hall of Cape Town International Airport. Now, the founder of Art for Amnesty, Bill Shipsey, joins us now from a Cape Town studio to talk us through today's event and tell us about the significance. A very good morning to you, Bill. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here and delighted to be out of the northern winter and in the sunny Cape Town.
We complain it's getting a little bit too hot here, Bill, but moving on to the business of today, tell us about today's proceedings, how things are going to happen. And I know you've embargoed pictures of the tapestry itself until now, but when can the public have a good look?
Well, sometime after 1 o'clock today, the tapestry will be unveiled, as you say, at the meeters and greeters area in the international terminal at Cape Town Airport. It's a giant tapestry that took 5 men and 1 woman 3 months to make in Aubusson in France. It's funded by artistic supporters of Amnesty International, Bono and Edge from U2, Peter Gabriel, Sting, Yoko Ono and John Lennon. And in the case of Sting and Peter Gabriel and Bono and Edge, great friends of Madiba during his life. In fact, Sting's involvement with Madiba goes back to 1988 when he performed at the giant concert in Wembley Stadium when Madiba was still in prison.
Tell us about the significance then of Cape Town Airport. Why have you chosen Cape Town International for this tapestry?
Well, as all South Africans will know, Nelson Mandela spent most of his life in prison within sight of Cape Town. He spent something like 17 or 18 years on Robben Island and then spent other time in, I think, Victor Vorster prison. So Cape Town has a lot of connection with Nelson Mandela when he was in prison. It's also the case that this is the second time Amnesty International has come to South Africa to honour Nelson Mandela. In 2006, Madiba was the recipient of Amnesty's most prestigious award, the Ambassador of Conscience Award, and that event was held in the Nelson Mandela Foundation in Johannesburg. So this time when we came back, we wanted to come to Cape Town and we wanted the tapestry to be in a public area where millions, literally millions of people will pass underneath it as they arrive into the mother city.
Now, 2 years ago on this day, the world came to South Africa for the memorial service of Nelson Mandela. Can you recall where you were at that time, maybe, and what were the feelings that were travelling with you at that time?
Well, I was home in Dublin in Ireland. It was a time of great sadness that such a great leader had passed, but also it was a time to sort of to remember the greatness of Nelson Mandela. And the greatness not just for South Africa, and I'm sure you had him here, he was your president, and you loved and appreciated him. But the legacy of Nelson Mandela goes far, far beyond South Africa, far beyond Africa. He is one of the truly great leaders that we have had. And at a time when human rights are under challenge, at a time when the values that he stood for in terms of the defence and protection of human rights are under challenge all over the world, we need the reminder of Nelson Mandela. We need people to think about what he stood for, his values in terms of supporting human rights, his values in supporting human dignity, the effort he put into ensuring that everyone was respected, that people where their human rights were defended and protected. And what we want people to do is we want people to do like Nelson Mandela did, and that was to take injustice personally. Because as you played from the interview or the speech given by Barack Obama 2 years ago, too many of us are inclined to sit on the sideline. We want South Africans to become involved with Amnesty International. We want people to engage. We want people to follow Madiba's example and to fight injustice wherever they find it.
In conclusion, just tell us a little bit about the acclaimed artist that's putting this piece of work together. Who is Peter Sis?
Peter Sis is born in communist Czechoslovakia. He sought and obtained political asylum in the United States. He is the only children's author and illustrator to win a MacArthur Genius Award. He has won more New York Times illustration awards than any other artist in history. And this is the fourth giant tapestry project we have cooperated on with him. We did one for the late Václav Havel, which hangs in Prague Airport, one for the late Seamus Heaney, an Irish Nobel poet in Dublin. And then earlier this summer, he designed and we created another giant tapestry which hangs on Ellis Island in honour of the late John Lennon.
Well, I thank you very much for joining us today. We look forward to the unveiling a little bit later today. That's Bill Shipsey. He's the founder of Art for Amnesty, and they'll be unveiling a huge Nelson Mandela tapestry today, a little bit later today, 1 o'clock at Cape Town International Airport. Let's take a quick look now at what's happening elsewhere in the world. We'll start in Europe, where the Times reports that the influx of refugees entering Germany this year has now passed the 1 million mark, heaping pressure on European leaders as they struggle to cope with the escalating migrant crisis. New York International Times says the FBI has received new information that suggests that Syed Rizwan Farouk and his wife Tashfeen Malik were considering violent action even before the Islamic State rose to prominence. Then, the South China Morning Post says that Beijing's first ever red alert for air pollution was lifted a little bit earlier today when blue skies reappeared after strong winds helped to disperse pollution that had shrouded the Chinese capital in smog since Monday night. Of course, Sindisiwe Mangele, well, she'll be applying for bail today ahead of her sentencing. But let's go to Alvis, who's standing by for a quick update from the courts.
Thank you, Yeben. Now, as you know, Sindisiwe Mangele is expected to apply for bail today ahead of her sentencing for the murder of the hip-hop artist Flabba Hadbedi. Now, she spent last night behind bars after being convicted of murdering Hadbedi by stabbing him in the chest with a steak knife during an argument at his home in Alexandra in March. Our reporter Sibongile Makani Mpolweni is at the High Court sitting in Randburg. A very good morning to you, Sibongile. Please recap for us what happened yesterday and what can we expect today.
Good morning, Alvis. Yesterday, Sindisiwe Mangele was convicted of murdering her lover, Nkululeko Flabba Hadbedi. The incident happened on the 9th of March this year. They were at Flabedi's home in Alexandra. We know that she stabbed him with a steak knife. She testified in court that she intentionally stabbed him but did not intend to kill him. Now, yesterday, Judge Sitole handed down sentence convicting her of murder, and she spent her first night in jail. What is expected this morning is that the defense indicated yesterday that they will ask for a probation report to be filed and also apply for bail for her. So we are expecting those two things this morning.
Now, what about the atmosphere in court this morning? Has she arrived already, and what will happen then?
She hasn't arrived yet. We haven't seen her. She might be in the cells downstairs, but she hasn't been brought upstairs to the courtroom. The court proceeding starts at 10, so we're expecting her anytime before 10 o'clock.
Any of the family members from Hadbedi present today as well, or expected to be present this morning?
The family is expected to be present. They were present even yesterday with Hadbedi's mother expressing her joy to the news that Sindisiwe Mangele has finally been convicted. She even said that at first, when the tragedy happened, she gave her the benefit of the doubt, thinking that it was an accident and that she wouldn't hold a grudge against her because of what she had done. But after listening to her testimony in court, where she painted her son in the manner that she did, making him to be this violent person who had spat on her face and rubbed the spat with a knife and did all those horrible things, which she said her son was not capable of doing, said yesterday that there is no way that she could forgive her. And the fact that Sindisiwe Mangele or her family has not come to them to apologize is also hurting to her. But she said that she's relieved that justice has finally been served and that now as the family, they will start to mourn the death of Flabba. She's expected to be here this morning, but she hasn't arrived yet. One person that has arrived is a friend of the family who also testified during the trial. He was there the night the incident happened. So we're only seeing him as of now. And also the advocate for the state, Advocate Scatter, is also here present in court. We haven't seen the defense yet, Elvis, but we are waiting.
Thank you so much, Mpumeni. You'll keep us updated, Sibongile, as it unfolds there, and we'll cross to her a little bit later. But right now, it's over to you, Yeben.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Davis. Now, the 16 days of activism campaign draws to a close today. Field workers believe the campaign does little more than highlight the problem. Now, South Africa has the highest rates of abuse of women and children in the world. The World Health Organization says 60,000 women and children are abused monthly. Field workers disagree and believe this number to be closer to 100,000 women a month. For a large number of these abused women, there's no recourse or escape.
Sometimes murder and domestic abuse shines a light in the darkest places. The murders of Ruva Steenkamp, Jade Panayotu, Anine Boyson, and many others all made national and international headlines. Yet there are thousands of others whose names we will never know. In South Africa, 1 in 4 women are abused and 1 in 6 women are murdered by their intimate partners.
He would come and take me and hit my head against the cement wall and say, "You're just trying to entice other men." All I wanted to do was love him and expect him to love me in return, have a family. I didn't expect the treatment I got at all. I didn't think I warranted it. I wasn't a bad person.
He used the knife. The first time he was using the knife. Also he was using the hammer. Anything that he gets when he is angry, he's using it.
The government has been at the forefront of tackling the problem of women abuse. The police and the courts are empowered through the Domestic Violence Act.
I'm scared he's going to come back and he's going to hurt me, because he said to me, even when the police arrived last night, he said to me he's been in prison how many times. He's not scared of jail, and this time he'll kill me. He'll kill me, and then he's got a good enough reason to sit.
Pumezim Dayenga believes a court interdict against her abusive husband saved her life.
My husband was abused me very much, because when he's drinking was hitting me in my face, hitting me in my body. Look at me now, I don't have even a teeth because of my husband.
The Yokosela Haven in Port Elizabeth has been providing support for abused women for 22 years. But initiatives like the 16 Days of Activism campaign and Women's Month seem to have little impact.
Just tells people don't do that, it's not good, it's not nice. We know that. But with awareness must come action. And I think it's very, very important. Not only should we assist women in shelters, but I do believe the government should assist women with skills training and also financially after they leave shelters and move on. Because, as I've said before, women go back because they don't have any finances.
Spotting an abusive partner is difficult.
In the very beginning, he was the most charming, loving, caring person that I'd ever met.
Then, after the abuse, regret.
He would cry. He would beg for forgiveness. He would tell me he's sorry.
But getting out of these relationships is often very difficult.
I get brainwashed by him again, and I try and I do everything to withdraw. The thing is, when you're in an abuse relationship, you feel there's no one else for you except him. And you keep on going back for more. But this time, I can see in his eyes, he's coming to hurt me.
Researchers have found that violent behaviour in relationships is significantly underreported. It remains one of the most common forms of violence experienced by South African women. The Domestic Abuse Act protects not only married women and their children, but those living with partners, same-sex or other, and those who share the same living space. Janine Lee, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
News Today takes an in-depth look on news locally, continentally, and globally. We bring the world to your home. We cover all economy news extensively to keep you informed. We are live to break news as and when they happen across the world. We analyze news using experts in all aspects. Make a date with News Today every Monday to Friday from 3 to 5:30 p.m.
Communication in the workplace is one crucial element that contributes to the day-to-day functioning of an organization. But what is even more important is the way in which employers, employees, and of course colleagues communicate with one another. Just how important is it to send that clear message? How effective is our communication in the workplace? Well, Kafilwe Marabani, the co-founder and director of a communications company called Giving Wings, joins us now in studio to talk about this. A very good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
Firstly, tell me about Giving Wings, about your company. How did it all start and why was that important for you to start that company?
Okay, so Giving Wings was launched from a time in my life when I was very frustrated. I was frustrated by the quality of communication, let it be in society to the workplace. I reached a point where I found that graduates couldn't articulate themselves. I then moved into the working world, and I found that professionals, whether it was the presentations that they were sharing in front of their teams, the message wasn't clear. It was confusing at times. People didn't get to the point. It moved on to events. It moved on to various activations. And then one day, in my frustration, I approached my sister, Tato Mboweni, and I said to her, Tato, something must be done. There must be a platform that can really empower people to articulate themselves well. And then Giving Wings was launched. And for us, the goal with Giving Wings is to help people understand that the power to communicate effectively is one of the most critical skills that any individual needs to harness. When you harness and develop that skill well, you have an ability to soar. Opportunities in this world will just embrace themselves because you're clear in your message and you're clear in connecting with your audience.
How do you harness and develop that particular skill? Because it's a very important skill, especially in the workplace.
It's crucial. I cannot stress it enough. For me, how do you harness your communication skills? I must start off by saying that it is a journey. I believe that nobody is born as an effective communicator. The ability to communicate is innate, is in all of us. But for me, it starts by understanding who you are. If you don't know who you are, if you're not clear on your capabilities, you are then hesitant to present yourself in front of an audience. It starts then by understanding your message. What is the objective of this message that I want to share with people? I find at times people communicate and they're not clear on the purpose of their message. Then it's about structuring it. How will I actually deliver this message? And then ultimately it's about delivering it, preparing that you deliver it well, and then connecting with your audience.
Now, does this include also written communication, or is it just verbal communication we're talking about?
For me, it's all inclusive. It's not only about verbal communication, and that's why we're so passionate about empowering effective communicators. People who non-verbally, from the way you dress, to the way in which the energy you bring into a room, to how do you communicate verbally, your written communication, when you send that email to your clients. If you have a company, how is your brand represented in the world? For me, it encompasses all those elements.
What are some of the benefits of effective communication within that workplace, and have you seen that rubbing off on other people?
I believe the benefits of harnessing your communication skills are endless. For me, if I'm to look at individuals, if you are able to articulate and present yourself well in any environment, people take you seriously. I find at times when I'm hosting my training workshops and I have people who present themselves articulately, people stand up and listen to them. People want to engage with them. If you're an entrepreneur for your business, if you communicate yourself well, people want to do business with you. If you're going in for that tender presentation and you've harnessed your message, people will engage with you. And then we have organizations. If organizations are passionate, whether it's a small company right up to large organizations, and you're passionate about improving the communication skills of your employees, you enhance the reputation of your organization. Therefore, people want to engage with you, people want to do business with you, and your employees are engaged. There's morale in your organization.
So it's all about verbal communication, it's about written communication, but somebody said to me once, it's also about body language, because the only language that they understand is body language.
Oh, so true. Your body speaks. I cannot say it enough. I've done my training workshops, and at times I find that I always coach people and tell them that from the moment you stand up and you're about to present your presentation or speech, your audience is watching you. You cannot walk onto the stage and you've slouched your bag or you're a bit apologetic about the environment. You need to stand tall. You need to stand bold. Sometimes people look at me and they say, Kifula, but you cannot judge me by the way that I dress. And the way you dress is also an example of that body language, because in whatever environment that you're in, you need to be dressed accordingly. And for me, that's an element of body language as well. So it's posture, it's eye contact. When people are speaking to you, a lot of times in our African cultures believe that don't look people in the eyes. If I'm not looking at you in the eyes, I'm not connecting with you.
That's about connection and making that connection. Now, what about social relationships? Because it's all about workplace that we're talking about now. How does that rub off onto your social relationships?
Oh, I cannot say it enough. You know, there's a famous saying that says, you know, a family that prays together stays together. And for me, I also believe the same is said for communication. If you communicate either in relationships with your friends, you're able to keep that bond. Without communication in our social settings, from husband to wife to family to parents, if you're not communicating with your children, if you're not in tune with what's happening with them, what happens is there's a lot of disengagement. People are doing their own and moving into their own paths because why? We're not building, we're not connecting. So it's very critical.
Briefly, a few tips on how we can communicate better.
Yes, so I get this all the time, and there's so many tips, but my key tip to anyone who wants to enhance their communication skills, it starts with yourself. You need to have that meeting with yourself and really unleash the confidence and capabilities within you. Secondly, it's about being clear on the objective of your message, whether it's that email to your manager, whether it's that interview that you're going into. If you're clear on why am I doing this, then connect with your audience. Know who your audience is. Don't speak above them. Speak to them. Try by all means to connect with your audience. And then most importantly, structure and preparation. I don't believe in speaking off the cuff. I believe in taking time out and preparing your message.
Thank you so much, Kafilwe, for joining us here in studio. That was Kafilwe Maribane giving us a few tips on how to communicate better, well, in your workplace and even in your social life. Now, there's a couple of comments that we have for you today. It is International Human Rights Day. The day marks the anniversary of the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. And it also, we remember Nelson Mandela today. It was his memorial service exactly on this day. Let's take a few comments and take a look here from Ali Matu. He says, I often wonder what it must have felt like for Mandela walking into freedom on the day of his release and becoming the president. Hashtag Human Rights Day. Remember that day when he left Victor Verster prison. Now, Tanu says everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and return to his country. That's on Human Rights Day, says Tanu. Paul Oliver says, the happy International Human Rights Day today to all, taking a moment to thank all of those who strive for social justice without fuss or fanfare. That one from Paul there. Debbie Kilroy says, today is International Human Rights Day. None of us are free until all of us are free No more prisons. That one there from Debbie. These are some of your comments. Keep them coming on the social pages, on the Twitter page as well as Facebook page. But first, let me hand you over to Eben Janssen for more.
Yeah, Elvis, nice interview you did there a little bit earlier about communication. Now, we're going to keep with this topic, communications. Our next guest here will be talking about personal branding. Now, it's a form of communication as well. It's how you can practice it to enhance your professionalism and your career. Now, Koketso Molaolwe is a life and career planning strategist, personal branding coach, and an author. He's with me in studio here this morning. Very good morning to you, Koketso.
Good morning to you, Eben, and good morning to the viewers at home.
Personal branding. Tell us, we heard about the workplace and
yeah.
you know how you have to kind of communicate, what you communicate when you stand in front of body language. But tell us about personal branding. What is that?
Personal branding is an ongoing process. I think we need to establish that. It's an ongoing process of intentionally establishing who you are, what you do, and what you stand for in the minds of a targeted audience. Whether we know it or we don't, everyone has a personal brand. It's just unfortunate that some people are not conscious about it. And very few of us actually leverage on the power of a personal brand.
Yeah.
And let alone acknowledge that our personal brand can actually be an avenue for personal, professional, and lifelong success. So it's actually just selling yourself in a way that sets you up for success.
How does that impact on your career within the context of the communication strategy that we talking a little bit earlier about?
Think about all the big brands that we have in our community. There's one thing that sets them apart from everybody else.
Yeah.
The question that I have for most of my clients is, in your workspace, what sets you apart from everyone else? What is that one thing that people identifies with when they think about you? What is that competitive advantage that you have in your surrounding, your brand that you are selling? What is it that you promise the people that are around you? Because branding is about promising something.
Yes.
What problems are you solving with your brand?
What are the steps that one should take to brand themselves as a professional, if that is what you're selling?
I think number one, you need to understand your brand power. Your brand power is your one thing, your niche. And I mean, you get to know your brand power. It's a collective of things. It's your unique combination of your work experience, your life experience, your personal characteristics, your skill set, and your talent matrix.
Yeah.
So those things, you need to be aware of them, and you need to harness them, and you need to define your one thing.
Yeah.
And second to that, we need to know what you're promising.
Yeah.
What does your brand promise?
So if we can come back onto screen, because I want to ask you to look at me and tell me, what is my brand promising to the world at large? It might be a little bit difficult question for you, but when you look at me face value, what am I communicating?
Well, when I walked in, you sold me a promise of a professional interview. That's what I was. When I looked at you, I was like, I feel like I'm going to be in safe hands.
Okay.
And you promised me. So it made me feel comfortable. It made me feel calm. So that's what you promised, and you are delivering.
Well, thank you very much. Now, here we look at a man whose brand never changed.
Yeah.
Throughout the time.
Look at
how
that.
do you read that? How do you read that picture, if I could ask you?
Consistency.
Yeah.
Consistency. Packaging. People can trust the package. They look at it, and it gives them a sense of saying there is sustainability, there is longevity. This brand has been tried and tested. Yes, and that is very important in branding, in personal branding. You can't be changing every day. Today you look like this, tomorrow you look like that. You confuse your
confuse
target.
the audience.
You confuse the audience.
And this one is probably ingrained into the DNA of the product that this man built over those years.
Exactly. The minute we see the product, we see it's synonymous with this. There's just that synergy.
If you have a brand that says troublemaker, how do you get rid of that?
I think, like I said to you before, it's an ongoing process that you establish in a targeted audience.
Yes.
Number one, you need to define what is it that you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And is that brand of troublemaker helping you achieve that?
Yes.
And if it's not, you need to start changing.
Rehabilitation.
You need to rehabilitate yourself, correctional service.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. Wonderful insights this morning from Koketso Molaolwe. He is a personal branding expert, coach and author. Thank you for joining us
Thank you so much
this morning. Of course, the news carries on. Let's take a quick look at what's happening around the country today in Bloemfontein, where the formal bail application of Motlatsi Moketi, accused of conspiring to murder the wife of alleged genital mutilator Peter Fredrickson, is expected to take place at the Magistrates Court there. Then here in Johannesburg, the case against Sindisiwe Mangele, who has been found guilty of murdering her boyfriend, hip-hop star Nkululeko Flabo Haberi, continues in the High Court sitting at the Brandberg Magistrates Court. She will be applying for bail there today. Quick look at what's happening on Newsroom Facebook page today. Political parties have reacted with shock to the sudden removal of Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene. President Jacob Zuma announced his replacement, David van Rooyen, a former Marafong municipality mayor and current member of parliament, at 8:20 last night. Then Grain South Africa CEO Jannie de Villiers says South Africa is going to continue importing food. Although parts of South Africa have received some rain this summer, farmers say it is not enough to break the current drought that the country is facing. That's what's on our Facebook page today. Of course, I can throw in our question of the day quickly. Of course, today we want you to give us your view on the sudden replacement of Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene. Time for us to take a quick break. After that, we'll come back to the weather.
Health Talk, your show on health practice.
The people being empowered with knowledge so that they can change their behavior and reduce their risk of being sick.
How serious is stress at work?
If we don't address workplace stress, that negative stress, then it can lead to burnout and it can lead to depression.
How does absentees affect companies?
The one that's really problematic for employers is the one that is unscheduled.
How can companies organize their wellness program?
Health promotion mustn't just be a one-size-fits-all type of approach. It must be customized based on understanding of the unique needs of that particular organization.
For health tips that will help you to adopt healthy living with Dr. Sillo Mutawung on Health Talk every Saturday.
Hi there, let's take a look at this weather. So it is expected to be very hot yet again over South Africa because of possibilities of those heat waves and veld fires over the Northern Cape Province, the Free State, some parts of the Western and the Eastern Cape Province. Temperatures will soar up into the upper 30s and some of them into the lower 30s. But let's start off with the rainfall. So we're expecting some of it towards Limpopo Province and definitely over some parts of Namibia. And then tomorrow it will move all the way towards the southern part and the interior of the East Coast, as well as over much of that northwestern coast, especially over Namibia regions. You should expect up to 30% chance of rain. And here are your temperatures, quite a hot one towards Upington. It's at 41 degrees. Bloemfontein is at 35. Maritzburg 31. And again, Lusaka 37. So scorcher of a day is expected towards Zambia. Antananarivo 30 degrees. Maputo is also expected to be quite hot. But then there is a small chance of rain. So let's hope the rainfall actually cools things down along those parts. And then have a look at these purple shades here. Those purple shades indicating the strongest chances of rain towards the central parts of Africa. And look at that towards Brazzaville as well. Thunderstorms will be coming in today as well as over tomorrow. Widespread showers moving in over the DRC. You'll see with your temperatures as well expected to be quite moderate, 27 towards Kigali, not as hot, and then 25 towards Kampala. Beautiful weather is expected towards Nairobi, except maybe possibilities of fog early in the morning, especially tomorrow. So if you're driving out early tomorrow morning, make sure your headlights are all on. Dar es Salaam is quite hot at 32 degrees. Usually temperatures are expected around those time, around 32 to maybe even 33. And then rainy conditions expected from Port Sudan going all the way down towards Djibouti, including most parts of Somalia. So do expect some good showers, but they won't last very long, as the rest of the central parts are expected to be quite hot. Nothing much is happening over the central parts. You can see the pressure is also indicating clear and blue skies, and very hot weather is expected over the Sahara Desert. Here's a look at your temperatures just quickly. About 20 for Al Jawf, Luxor is at 26, Mecca is at 31, and cool weather for Damascus, as well as all the way towards Riyadh. Temperatures as high as only 17 degrees, much cooler, which is also good because it's the winter kind of time, winter weather that we're expecting there. And then some showers just along the coastal parts. Again, clear conditions for the northern and the central regions of the Sahara Desert. Nothing is expected. They're going all the way towards Dakar. Temperatures will go as high as 28 degrees. Some sunny skies coming in, starting from Bamako, moving all the way towards that eastern interior. But much of the west is expected to be slightly cloudy, especially along the coastal parts. And that's where I'll leave it for the weather. There should be more, so do stick around.
Yeah, before we wrap up this hour, the High Court sitting in Randburg yesterday found Sindisiwe Mangele guilty of stabbing to death hip-hop artist Nkululeko Flaba Habedi in March of this year. Acting Judge Solisitole dismissed Mangele's version that she acted in self-defense in this case. Of course, today she'll be applying for bail in that self-same court. But there's been lots and lots of comments around this. Kanyisile Dlamini says there's nothing wrong with Sindisiwe Mangele's state of mind. She knew that what she was doing. Same goes for Oscar Pistorius, she says. Malaza talks about Mangele will be sentenced today after being found guilty of murder. This will be interesting on the outcome. Linda says, once again, our poor legal justice system showed the importance of public figures' roles in court against Mangele. Those are some of the views that we continue to see on social media with regards to another high-profile domestic abuse case, they say it was. Interesting. If she'll get bail today, we'll be back at the top of the hour at 10 o'clock with another update. You're watching Newsroom here on SABC News. We'll see you then.
As stories are broken around the world, SABC makes sure you do not miss out. As the stories unfold throughout the day, News at 8 updates all newsworthy stories worldwide. Globally, we are there. Locally, we leave no story untold. Make a date with News at 8 every Saturday and Sunday on SABC News, Africa's news leader.
News at 1 touches the nerve of business locally and abroad. Find out how a move in the economy affects you daily. We bring to you all stock markets information across the globe daily. We deliver the latest news and sport news of the day. Make a date with lunchtime news at 1 daily.
The son of Africa, Trevor Noah, is leaving America in stitches.
I never dreamed that I would one day have, well, two things really. An indoor toilet and a job as host of The Daily Show.
We are the first to bring you the latest films around the globe.
Dear white people, the minimum requirement of black friends needed to not seem racist has just been raised to 2.
Cobhams Asako is a gifted blind musician, a master of soothing notes from the piano.
I love to sit behind the piano. That also helps me find inspiration.
Join Refulo Mulwa every Friday for that 1-hour weekly dose of art and entertainment news at 9 p.m. on Trends.
It's 10:00 hours Central Africa time on Thursday, the 10th of the 12th, 2015. Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the second hour. This is Newsroom on SABC News Channel 404. We are broadcasting live from Auckland Park Studios, Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. We're also streaming live on YouTube, with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. Now, you have to stay with us as we bring you the latest news from here and around the globe. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be your host until 12 o'clock. But first, let's take a look at all your news headlines. The rand plummets against international currencies after last night's announcement of removing the finance minister Nhlanhla from his portfolio. Sindisiwe Mangele is expected to apply for bail in the High Court sitting in Randburg. And mixed reaction to the final draft of the climate change agreement released at the COP21 conference in Paris last night. Now, those are some of your news headlines, but first, before we get into the big stories, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what he has in store for us on the sports front. A very good morning.
Good morning, Elvis, and hearty good morning to all of our viewers at home. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
For their chance again, a shot coming in! Into the back of the net!
South Africa's under-23s were well beaten by an organised Algeria, denting their hopes for automatic qualification to the Rio Olympics. And the Blues advanced to the round of 16 as Group G winners with a 2-0 victory over Porto, keeping troubled manager Jose Mourinho in his job.
That surely sends Chelsea through to the knockout stages of the Champions League.
And the Cape Cobras blow a sure thing as the Dolphins scrape their way to Ram Slam T20 final. And this as Tyson Fury loses his title due to a technicality. And that's what we've got for you in terms of the sports. Around about 10:20 or so. Make sure you stick around for that.
Thank you, Kendall. Right now, your top story this hour. The rand plummeted against international currencies after last night's announcement that President Jacob Zuma has removed the finance minister Nhlanhla from his portfolio. The rand broke through that magical 15 rand a dollar and 23 rand a pound level. Nene is to be replaced by the ANC MP and whip of the Standing Committee on Finance, David van Rooyen. The president said he had decided to remove Nene as Minister of Finance ahead of his deployment to another strategic position.
I've decided to remove Mr. Nhlanhla Nene
as Minister of Finance ahead of his deployment to another strategic position. Mr. Nene has done well since his appointment as Minister of Finance during a difficult economic climate. Mr. Nene enjoys a lot of respect in the sector, locally and abroad, having also served as a Deputy Minister of Finance previously. I've decided to appoint a Member of Parliament, Mr. David van Rooyen, as the new Minister of Finance. Mr. van Rooyen serves as a whip of the Standing Committee on Finance and as whip of the Economic Transformation Cluster. He is a former executive mayor of Merafong Municipality and a former Northwest Provincial Chairperson of the South African Local Government Association. I wish Mr. van Rooyen all the best in this new deployment.
Well, that's where we got to leave it. We're going now live to the Randburg High Court sitting in Randburg, where Sindisiwe Mangela is expected to apply for bail this morning. Let's go there live. Well, as you can see there, Cindy Mangela in court right now, but they're still waiting for the judge to arrive. As soon as that happens, we'll go there live to bring you the latest what's happening there. Now, let's go back to our story that we left you with. Now, some MPs have reacted with shock to the axing of Nhlanhla Nene, the finance minister. They've described the president's decision as reckless, saying that David van Rooyen will have his work cut out for him.
David van Rooyen, the new finance minister, served as the whip in the Standing Committee on Finance and in the Economic Transformation Cluster. He is also the former executive mayor of Merafong Municipality and the former chairperson of the South African Local Government Association in the Northwest. Van Rooyen, a former MK operative, boasts among his qualifications an MSc Finance in Economic Policy, which was conferred on him by the University of London last year. Despite this, DA leader Mmusi Maimane said in a statement that the appointment of Van Rooyen gives no assurance that the country's economy is in safe hands. Equally scathing in his reaction was EFF's Mbuyiseli Ndlozi, who described the new finance minister as unknown and inexperienced. The UDM says Van Rooyen has his work cut out for him.
Well, with all due respect to my former colleague in the finance portfolio, we feel that a person would actually be able to take up that position must first deputize, like what happened with Finance Minister Nene. He hasn't had the opportunity to learn the ropes of how to do the job. So I think he's being set up to actually fail.
Vuyani Green, SABC News, Parliament.
Very much, Now, some economic analysts are also surprised at the decision to replace the finance minister. We spoke to economist at Investment Solutions, Chris Hart, a little bit earlier this morning.
The decision was strange because Nene has not been in the position for long and has actually generated quite a lot of confidence in himself and the ministry while he's there. He obviously brings a lot of institutional memory. He was Deputy Minister of Finance before that, and of course he took over Pravin Gordhan's shoes and now being pushed out for an unknown. And when I say unknown, from a point of view of the financial markets perspective, the new minister is not known. So I really do wish him well because he's got a lot of work to actually gain, for the markets to gain confidence in him quite quickly because it needs to be settled down. The rand's dynamic is interesting because with the downgrade by S&P to a negative outlook, now you've got the prospect of a credit rating downgrade. This comes at a critical stage of our economy. That downgrade takes us into junk status. So immediately you've got a dynamic in the financial markets where the normal natural inflows now are more hesitant because, what if there's a downgrade? And of course there's the possibility of some funds preempting a possible downgrade by starting to lighten their load in South Africa. And we sit with a current account deficit that is quite big that needs to be funded.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the government's deficit itself needs to be funded. And when the rand weakens, the bond yields rise, which, of course, raises the government financing, and you can get into a negative spiral.
Now, just hours after the axing of the Finance Minister, President Zuma addressed the newly formed African Business Leaders Forum in Johannesburg. The president told the gathering that it was time for Africans to reclaim their economic freedom.
We need to free ourselves economically. We need to be economically free. Once that happens, it will protect your political freedom and power, therefore. These two go together, political power and economic power. If these two, you hold the political power, they hold the economic power, we are going to dance for their music. They will even tell you laws to make and not to make with your power. So to me, this is absolutely important. I wish Africans could understand where Africans come from and where and why we are here in the form in which we are and where do we need to go. We need to define our destiny ourselves.
At the same function, addressing the newly launched African Business Forum, the mining magnate, Patrice Motsepe, has called on business on the continent to tap into leadership resources that's available to them.
You need to get some of the most successful African entrepreneurs who've got a track record, who've learned from their challenges and also who can identify opportunities for us to work together. You must get them involved. People like Alito Dangote, Kuribu from Kenya, various others. And I was suggesting that we should try and get somebody like Aliko to really take leadership of this process and have him as the first chairperson or president of this initiative.
And that's surely needed on the continent. Now, back to the courts and see where Mangele is expected to apply for bail today ahead of her sentencing for the murder of hip-hop artist Flaba Habedi. Now, last night she spent behind bars after being convicted of murdering Habedi by stabbing him in the chest with a steak knife during an argument at his home in Alexandra in March. The acting judge, Soli Satole, dismissed Mangele's version that she acted in self-defense. A date for sentencing has not yet been set. Let's now see if we can cross to the court to see if it is on at the moment. And, well, it doesn't seem like it's on as yet, so we will keep you abreast of the happenings in court there in a short while. Let's now continue. The trial of 24-year-old Prashalan Naidu is expected to resume in the Randburg Magistrates Court also this morning. Naidu faces 2 counts of culpable homicide. That was after his vehicle crashed into the television presenter Simba Mere's car in January this year. Mere and his friend, Katie Shea O'Brien, were killed on impact. The trial will resume this morning with the submission of evidence to the court by a state witness. Yesterday, the presiding magistrate, accompanied by both the state and the defence, conducted a location inspection of the crash scene on William Nicol Drive, where the fatal crash occurred. The state prosecutor didn't allow any media to attend the inspection, citing safety concerns. Now, despite heavy downpours in some parts of drought-stricken KwaZulu-Natal in recent days, the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Department says that water levels in the dams in the province remain virtually unchanged. The Hazelmere Dam, which supplies water to the Greater eThekwini municipality, has risen by a mere 1% to 26% after the rains. The department spokesperson says more rain needs to fall in catchment areas before water restrictions can be lifted. Big story here. There's been mixed reaction to the final draft of the climate change agreement that was released at the COP21 conference in Paris last night. Some say it will save the conference from collapsing, while others argue that it will do little to produce a meaningful and legally binding climate change deal by the end of the week.
After days of difficult negotiations and extensive lobbying, the much-anticipated final draft was tabled yesterday afternoon.
But in long days, long nights,
ministers representing almost 200 governments were the first to examine it.
It is generally a good draft. We are at the point consulting other parties, because at this stage parties have got to just analyze, consult what the views are of other parties.
Any potential areas of conflict?
No, there are actually three big areas that require quite a lot of work, and those are the cross-cutting areas, the usual one: differentiation, finance, and long-term goals.
It was a busy night for delegates and civil society groups last night, carefully interrogating the draft agreement line by line.
What we would like to strongly see in this agreement is a requirement that all countries will review their current pledges and look at increasing them before it enters into force in 2020. If we do not do that, we lock in the current low levels of ambition for more than 10 to 15 years. That is our biggest problem.
Although the draft has been whittled down from the initial 48 pages to 29, it still contains a lot of unresolved key issues. In fact, some say it falls far short to yield a just climate deal.
And people are dying. People are dying. So we need their support. And when they are looking into the text now, we urge them that they do the right choice. This is our time.
The major disputes still to be resolved are centered on how to finance developing countries to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, what target to set for the limit on rising temperatures, and how the liability of global warming will be shared between rich and poor countries. Time is really of the essence now. There's clearly an urgent need to resolve the outstanding questions. But perhaps the big question is, can they do so over the remaining 2 days of this conference? Tammy Dixon, SABC News in Paris.
Now, attacks committed in Paris have had a global effect far beyond the borders of Europe. In America, the ensuing terrorist shooting in California have not only impacted the U.S. government policy, but also the race for who will become the next president, with leading Republican candidate Donald Trump calling for a ban on Muslims entering the United States. Our U.S. correspondent, Kate Fisher, reports from Washington.
Donald Trump, Republican presidential candidate front-runner, has courted controversy at every opportunity during his campaign. But since the deadly attacks in Paris and California, his rhetoric has ramped up.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
Suddenly, foreign policy is front and centre in this presidential race, with candidates rushing to find the most voter-friendly position. So how will that affect the politics of the campaign?
It's very much on the minds of voters today, but so too is the economy, and that's been a persistent concern for many Americans. I'm not sure Americans are focusing on the specifics that Donald Trump has been saying, rather that here's somebody who's going to be strong when we have a president who many perceive as weak. But yes, I think it clearly will turn off some people, and it could hurt the Republicans next fall if they're perceived as being either anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim. I think those are things that the Republican Party has to be very concerned about.
On the Democratic side, a foreign policy focus should be good for an experienced diplomat like frontrunner Hillary Clinton, a former Secretary of State.
Well, if you're ready for me, I'm ready for you.
But it has its own difficulties, not least how to differentiate herself from the current president whose administration she served.
Hillary Clinton's been talking for some time now about this idea of having a safe zone in northern Syria. And this is something that obviously President Obama has wrestled with for quite some time. It doesn't make it easy right now for President Obama to govern, and it makes it harder for Secretary Clinton to run on the Democratic ticket with the support of the Obama base that she's going to need to get elected.
There's no doubt whoever becomes the next resident of this House will face huge foreign policy challenges from across the world. And although foreign policy is at the centre of this presidential campaign right now, come election day in November, it may be that traditional domestic policies like the economy are what really matter to the American people. Kate Fisher, SABC News, Washington.
Preparing for victory requires intense effort and teamwork. When you get to it, there is no turning back because all eyes are on you. When it's action time, nothing should stand in your way. Sports Live tackles and analyzes all the sport action. This is the home of all your sport news, updates, and more. Sports Live weekdays at 8:30 p.m.
Good morning, welcome back. I'm Kendall Makamate and I've got your sports on Newsroom. Now, South Africa's national under-23 football team have 3 days to regroup after they failed to qualify for the Olympic Games, as well as the final of the under-23 Africa Cup of Nations. The team lost 2-0 to Algeria in the semi-final, which was their first opportunity, but now will face Senegal in the third-place playoff match. The top three of the competition will gain qualification to Rio 2016. Algeria took an early lead in the 9th minute through Oussama Darfalou when the swift Algerians caught the South Africans' backline flat-footed. It was Algeria who showed more purpose in the second half, and it came as no surprise when Benka Massa collected a loose ball from a corner kick and rifled home an unstoppable shot on the 50th minute.
The first goal of this game for this man.
And Nigeria confirmed the first spot at the Olympics with a 1-0 win over host Senegal in a tense matchup, which saw Osayuno Tione deliberately trying to stop the ball and getting sent off.
Yeah, it's a penalty. They put it in the back of the net.
Now, South Africa will now meet Senegal on Saturday.
The back of the net, yes, he can. Nigeria have taken the lead.
Now, teams from the English Premier League did not have the best of starts in this season's UEFA Champions League. However, 3 of the 4 are now through to the knockout stage of the competition.
2 more English teams have joined Manchester City in the last 16 of the Champions League, with only giants Manchester United booted out of the competition. Arsenal, who suffered 2 losses in a row at the beginning of the campaign, emphatically beat Olympiacos 3-0 in their own backyard to march to the knockout stage for the 16th season running.
Giroud on the move, and Giroud's in. Giroud scores again.
French striker Olivier Giroud was the star of the show as he grabbed his first hat-trick for the club to help the Gunners leapfrog their host in Group F.
And Arsenal are surely there.
Chelsea, who are struggling in the home front, collected 3 points against Porto. The Jose Mourinho-led side were looking to appease their fans as they pushed forward in search of an opening goal from the word goal. And early in the second half, Williams' fifth strike of the campaign secured the Blues' progress as Group G winners at the expense of their coach's former
And here's
employers.
Williams! A goal that surely sends Chelsea through to the knockout stages of the Champions League.
Lionel Messi scored his 88th UEFA Champions League goal in the 28th minute of Barcelona's match against Bayer Leverkusen.
Onside, Messi! Yes! The reward for a superbly timed run from Leo Messi.
But 3 minutes later, Mexican striker Javier Hernandez cancelled out Barca's goal with a left-footed shot from inside the penalty area. Leverkusen dropped to the Europa League along with Olympiacos, Porto and Valencia. On Monday, the knockout phase starts in earnest when the remaining UEFA Champions League hopefuls learn who awaits in the last 16. Mduduzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
Now I'll bring all the sport back home, and the Dolphins secured a place in the Ram Slam T20 Challenge final when they bagged a thrilling 5-run victory over the Cape Cobras at Kingsmead in Durban last night. Andile Petlokwaya was once again the bowling hero at the death for the Dolphins, being given the 18th and 20th overs to take 2 for 7 and also build the pressure that led to the run-out of Justin Ontong.
That could be gone. That is a good piece of fielding from Miller in the deep at long off. Ontong's not even waiting around. They got it. The Dolphins have done it. Petlokwaya has done the impossible.
With Cobras' Richard Levy blitzing 85 from just 43 balls, the Cobras went into the last 5 overs of their chase needing just a runner ball with 7 wickets in hand to win the playoff, but were unable to cross the line. And Switzerland's anti-doping laboratory did not break rules set by the World Anti-Doping Agency when it destroyed analyzed blood samples. Now, this is according to an internal audit amid massive scandal rocking world athletics. WADA had accused the Swiss lab of acting contrary to the specific instructions from WADA to retain 67 samples transferred to it from the Moscow lab back in November 2012. The charges came in a bombshell report in which WADA alleged systematic doping in Russian athletics enabled by large-scale corruption, prompting the IAAF to suspend Russia. The lab explained their actions of destroying 55 of the samples by saying they'd been analyzed and the results then passed on to WADA. Now, contrary to WADA's charges, the remaining samples were not destroyed by the lab as found by the audit. And Tyson Fury, the recently crowned 27-year-old world heavyweight champion, was relieved of his IBF belt after agreeing to a contracted rematch with the Ukrainian Vladimir Klitschko instead of fighting the IBF's mandatory challenger. The IBF explained its decision to strip Fury of their title, saying the rematch was in direct violation of an IBF rule, as Ukraine's Glaskov was the #1 contender for the IBF title and should have been Fury's next opponent. Fury still holds the WBA and WBO titles.
Still he tries to confuse Klitschko, it turns him round.
All right, some shenanigans happening in the world of heavyweight boxing now. We're going to take a quick break, and after the break, Evan will be back with a regular slot with news from the rest of the continent.
Breaking news. Clientele is giving more back to our clients. In fact, we are giving it all back.
Yes, all your premiums, every single cent you ever paid, on top of your payout amount, in cash, tax-free. This is a South African first. Plans start from only 120 Rand per month.
The Clientele Ultimate Dignity Plan.
The only funeral plan that pays you everything back.
SMS Ultimate to 47025, and we'll call you back.
At least 7 people have been killed in Burundi's capital, Bujumbura, last night. According to residents, police shot and killed the men after conducting house-to-house searches. Months of protests have been taking place opposing President Pierre Nkurunziza's controversial third term. 240 people have been killed since the unrest began, raising concerns that the African nation may be heading back into an ethnic war. Moroccan officials have recovered 11 African migrants who died when their boat sank off the coast there. Authorities said that they were trying to cross the Canary Islands when their boat sank due to bad weather. It is still unsure how many people were in the boat. Moroccan rescue services have boosted their search for survivors. And drought-stricken South Sudan is interested in joining international plans to tackle climate change. As part of a bill now in the legislature, the country's environmental minister, Deng Hoc Yai, aims to plant 2 million new trees a year and ban the felling of trees without government permission. He also plans to impose a lifetime prison sentence on anyone who is found guilty of poaching in the country. Hello again. This is the African segment here on Newsroom. Now, a majority of Africans say corruption has risen over the past year, and most governments are seen as failing in their duty to stop the abuse of power, bribery and secret deals. This, according to the latest survey conducted by Transparency International. Just over 43,000 people from 28 countries in sub-Saharan Africa participated in this poll. The results showed that business ranked as having the second highest levels of corruption in the region after the police. Sub-Saharan Africa has a total population of 973 million, and more than 22% of those who came into contact with public service officials in the past 12 months say that they paid a bribe. Now, joining us via Skype is the Executive Director of Corruption Watch, David Lewis. Very good morning to you.
Morning.
If we can start with the Transparency International report, according to you, what were the most alarming findings of this survey?
Well, the most alarming but not surprising results of the South African leg of the survey were that even though 58% of all those surveyed across Africa in corruption, 83% of South Africans believe and 9% of South African governments doing a better job of combating corruption. Those are two. The one is the highest result for Africa. The other
Unfortunately, we have to apologise. Apologise to you as well, Mr. Lewis. We can't seem to get that Skype crossing together. It seems there's a bandwidth issue at the moment. We'll try and get back to it at some point today. However, moving to Zimbabwe, the ruling ZANU-PF party heads into a non-elective conference tomorrow amid factional battles to succeed the 91-year-old president, Robert Mugabe. He's condemned the power struggles within the party.
I choose people according to my knowledge of them.
President Mugabe addressing internal revolt from some quarters over his appointments. This, a year after the party Congress accorded him power to appoint the vice presidents. He scolded new party members who are campaigning to be appointed to top positions. It's his strongest condemnation yet of power struggles.
There are problems now that have to do with personalities. People wanting to advance themselves within the party. Wanting this position or that position. We have a problem at the moment that threatens to split the party.
President Mugabe heads to another party conference in Victoria Falls on Friday. This amidst open hostilities between groups allegedly supporting the First Lady and those behind the Vice President, Emmerson Mnangagwa.
Then there lies formulation of lies, manufacturing of lies, talking about the actions of people, purported actions of people, which have never happened.
It's also a warning from him to his party members that he's aware of things that are going on, and a demonstration of his keenness to stamp his authority on the party and the party conference which is pending. So it's clearly a warning mainly to those that he thinks are trying to undermine his appointees, trying to undermine his agenda for his party.
Ahead of the non-elective conference, the Women's League has fired its spokesman and administrative secretary for fanning factionalism. The League has also resolved to lobby for the inclusion of a woman in the presidium. There's a suggestion that First Lady Grace Mugabe might be angling for the post. The League will also propose to make Mugabe the life president of the party, clearing any speculation that the 91-year-old ruler has any plans to step down ahead of the 2018 elections. Shingai Nyoka, SABC News, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Well, one of the positive talking points on the continent this year has been investment in Africa. There's continued opportunity across the continent despite the risks such as the commodities downturn and security threats that we've seen. Africa offers many opportunities with oil exploration booming and the natural resources on offer, as well as large masses of open land. Recently, ties between India and China and the continent have been expanding rapidly to cover more areas of investment. Now, investment in Africa generally has grown over the past decade, and joining us to tell us why is the CEO of the Africa Practice Group, Marcus Courage. Marcus, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
If you had to put a veneer over 2015 for the African continent in the investment space, what will you say?
Well, I think it's been a year marked out by volatility, honestly. I think this is a continent that is still very, very much resource-dependent, very many commodity-dependent economies. We've seen unprecedented low prices for iron ore, low prices of copper, oil trading at a very low price. Those economies that have depended on copper, iron ore and oil are really struggling. Having said that, there are economies who not so commodity dependent who've been trading very nicely throughout 2015. I think specifically of East Africa, where foreign direct investment into the region has grown progressively over the last 3 or so years. Real interest in the big consumer market that is represented by Ethiopia because of the numbers there, the 80 to 100 million population. I think in Kenya, evidently, Kenya's turning into a real powerhouse in the region, starting to rival South Africa as a gateway for international businesses doing business on the continent. So I'd say, as with all discussions about the African continent, there are winners and there are losers, and one has to be selective about identifying where the opportunities are.
Is it as simple as splitting it east versus west, with commodity-based economies in the east in a little bit of trouble and in the west a little bit of trouble, and in the east doing a whole lot better?
I think it's, oil and gas were found in the 1970s in Nigeria. It's one of the biggest producers, and that whole Gulf of Guinea has been relatively explored and exploited. East Africa, their finds have been relatively recent, so deposits in Uganda and Kenya, huge gas deposits offshore in Tanzania. These have yet to actually make it through into the fiscus, and so they're less commodity dependent, and it's been by virtue of that. I would point out, though, Nigeria is far more than just a commodity play. Still too reliant on oil, and the economy is struggling, as all investors know, and companies who are invested in Nigeria are experiencing. But it represents the biggest prize for fast-moving consumer goods companies, such a big population.
I want to talk about South Africa a little bit. If you read the papers, you'll see that all the developing economies around the world are either doing all right or their outlook is better than the rest of the world for next year. Why is South Africa the only one then lagging behind?
Well, good question. So I have a privileged job. I spend about 50% of my time on the continent and travelling from one office to another. We've got 7 offices at Africa Practice on the continent. We've got a portfolio of about 100 companies that we advise. And then I spend 50% of my time outside the continent, largely talking to investors in Europe and North America. And really for the last 2-3 years, people have been concerned about the trajectory of the South African economy.
Yeah.
And that's played out in the rand. It's played out in sovereign ratings, and there is a diminished confidence in that trajectory. I mean, this week has been. I'm here talking to you in Johannesburg today. This week has been a hell of a week for news.
Yeah.
Anglo-American doing this unprecedented restructuring with the prospect of really significant scale of retrenchment that will impact this economy in particular. And then the reshuffle this morning, the announcement that your finance minister is being moved out of that portfolio. I think these are again they do nothing for the nerves of investors. So I think to answer your point, is the outlook rosy? Do investors see it that way for 2016? South Africa has got a very strong base, but I don't think that we are optimistic for anything in terms of catalytic development here for 2016.
How do you read 2016 within the South African and the African context?
Well, so I suppose I used to live in Johannesburg 10 years or so ago, and the narrative there was very much about South Africa as the gateway into Africa. I've been disappointed with the way South Africa has seized that opportunity. I think there's been single initiatives that corporates have done, some of your bigger companies in financial services, in consumer goods. Now more we're seeing it in construction. But there's still far greater opportunity for South African companies in the rest of Africa. The trade statistics between Nigeria and South Africa alone are frankly far too small. South Africa exports... of South African exports into the economy, I think Nigeria accounts for roughly only about 5%. Well, that's a missed opportunity. Yeah. And there's much more that can be done at a bilateral level, government to government. There's tension in that relationship that needs to be resolved and addressed. And if the South African economy is to create the jobs, it's going to come predominantly, I think, in manufacturing, and that means exports to Africa. Yeah. So that's where the focus in
South Africa needs to get busy working and building stuff is what Marcus Courage tells us today. Thank you for coming. We've run out of time to talk about this particular conversation, but I think it's one that we'll continue to have throughout the year of 2016. Marcus Courage is the CEO of the Africa Practice Group, giving us his views today on investment on the continent, but also confidence and how South Africa is viewed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now, let's go back to that earlier interview we had on corruption on the continent. Now, it's, 973 million people in sub-Saharan Africa says that 22% of them have paid a bribe to an official. This according to Transparency International's latest report. Of course, we spoke to Corruption Watch's Executive Director, David Lewis, a little bit earlier. Are you back, David?
Yes.
Just give us the broad strokes again on the report, the Transparency International one, that is.
Well, from a South African perspective, the most disturbing part of the report is that whereas 58% of people across the sub-Saharan African survey said that corruption was getting worse in their country, 83% of South Africans believe this to be the case, the highest number recorded. And 79% of South Africans believe that their government is doing a bad job at combating corruption. There are some better figures in South Africa, but those two figures are particularly disturbing.
One of the things for the wider continent that was disturbing was the courts. The report was quite scathing about the courts around the continent being quite corrupt. How should one read that?
Well, you should read it, I think, as it's, as the respondents indicated. But I don't think that that's the case with South Africa, at least with the High Court. It may be the case in the Magistrates' Court. It's not the case in the High Court. But the rest of the South African criminal justice system is really problematic. The police and the prosecutorial authorities.
Finally, it says also in the report, David, if I can just get you to just wrap it for us, that poor people are more likely to pay bribes on the continent than rich people. That's That's really a bleak picture, isn't it? Okay, well, we've lost David Lewis. You can't say we haven't tried. We really tried today to try and get on top of the Transparency International report on corruption in the courts on the continent, but also wider public service. Now, of course, judgment is underway in the Sindisiwe Mangele court case in the High Court sitting in Randburg. Let's go there for the judgment.
So I shall note here in the bench book that this case is hereby postponed to the 9th and the 10th of March 2016. On those days, 9th and March 2016, the court will hear argument in mitigation and aggravation. And I have to emphasize to both counsel to make sure that they prepare themselves for that date, because no other postponement can be granted after the date. The 9th and the 10th of March definitely will hear argument in mitigation and in aggravation. Mr. Makubela, if you're going to file heads or call witnesses to testify, please make sure that you've consulted with them before those dates, and you must be ready for the 9th and the 10th. And then these are instructions from the JP as well, because we cannot keep on postponing this date further. The second item then has to do with a bail application, and I'll hear argument on that, because I'm told by counsel for the state that the state is opposing the application. I don't know on what grounds. I'll hear argument this morning on that. Mr. Makubela, do you want to have a right to begin on the second item, on the application for bail?
Yes, I wait for what will be as follows. That we will not be leading any oral evidence. I will proceed by way of affidavit, after which, if necessary, will address His Lordship on specific aspects and or matters that His Lordship would want me to specifically deal with for purposes of the application.
Well, it looks like another postponement is the order of the day there. It looks until March 2016. We might see that. Of course, we'll tell you what happens with the bail application in the meanwhile when that comes through, expected within the next half hour to an hour to have that finalised. We'll let you know at the top of the hour when we go back to our news. Now, of course, many of us, if not at all, have seen a sign that reads, "Leave this place in the same condition as you would like to find it." This, of course, refers to clean or acceptable condition and should definitely be applied to our entire planet. Now, one way of making sure the planet is left in the same good condition we would like future generations to find it is through recycling. Now, we've seen with the crises we had with waste here in Johannesburg in recent times. Paul Tsietse Monari is with us in studio to talk about the importance of recycling amidst the increasing waste noticeable in South African cities. Firstly, should we be concerned with the pictures that we've seen emerging in recent times, or is this an isolated incident in your view?
We should be very, very concerned. I mean, if you just load all the stuff on the weather system, that you'll see that I just put it up specifically for you to just see it.
Can we have a look at some of the concerns that you have?
Yeah. When you look at the amount of waste and rubbish that is in our landfills, that is in our cities, in the city centers. I'm not only talking about the strikes that we saw last week and so on. Just in general, it is a concerning fact that we have a lot of waste that is just thrown out there. People littering, and this is in the streets of Johannesburg. People littering all over the place, and it's actually filling up into our landfills and also filling into the ground. And a lot of it, like plastic bags and bottles, are not biodegradable. So if they're in the ground, if they're in the land, they will stay there for eternity to come. So it is very concerning. It's not just something that's recently just popped up. Our over-consuming nature as humans, and it continues on a daily basis.
Now, recycling is the buzzword here in this instance. Why is it so important for us to recycle? And if we do, what about the guys that come into your street to do the recycling?
Yeah, the importance of it, first of all, is to stop things like this. I mean, this is the city centre. That's a Carlton Centre, a small street, that area. There's lots of people there, and it's a human health threat to have this kind of things happening into our country, especially in big cities where there's millions of people living there. So the people that are trying to recycle on the streets, they cannot do as much as what all of us collectively can get up to. I mean, if you are sitting at home and doing your recycling, if I'm sitting at home doing my recycling, there's actually a lot that we can do. And it's just to show you an example of
what does this talk to? Just tell us.
This is basically the amount of recycling that's been taking place ever since this whole green and sustainability awareness has been coming through. And I've dated it from about 2005, 2006 to just about recently, 10 years from now. And
I look at the last 3, 4, 5 years, the growth is slowed down a little bit.
It's mainly slowed down because now the whole conversation is sort of getting old and slowly tired. People are hearing the same old thing. And also people are thinking it's difficult to actually recycle because now we have to have about 3 bins or 7 bins in the house for paper, glass, the whole works. And so people are sort of getting demotivated about it. And they're starting to think, I'm not going to have these big trash cans in my house. They're unattractive and they're actually a lot of work for me. And then at the same time, pick it up, or whoever picks up the rubbish does not pick up the waste in that order. They just take everything at once and then they go ahead with their waste disposal.
And then people would sift through it at landfill sites.
But it has been looking good, and it looks like people actually are warming up to the whole idea, and they are trying to save energy.
For South Africa, though, how big a game changer can it be for us to turn our waste into energy, and what is that process?
It's actually very good, and it's for any country, developing or developed. As much as it takes a lot of money, it also brings you a lot of money back. If you look at the amount of cans that we use here in South Africa, I mean, we drink a lot of cool drinks from these small cans. And if you can take those, this is the lifespan of a can, by the way. If you can take those and just recycle them, they will bring so much back into revenue in the country as a whole that it will be more beneficial in less than 10 to 15 years for us to actually go fully into recycling, because now we'll cut out that first procedure of going to mine the resource that we need to make cans.
Absolutely.
And then we'll just continue from melting to back to processing
it's a continuous
manufacturing
green cycle. But right now, the effect of recycling that it could have on climate change, or how does the two tie together, in your opinion?
That is really good. Now, so if we recycle, then we'll never have to burn fossil fuels ever again, because then we won't be releasing a lot of these combustion fuels or these really greenhouse gases into the sky, because what we're doing is we're taking our waste, we're reducing the amount of waste, we are recycling it, and we're turning it into fuel, and that fuel happens to be much cleaner than the fuel that you would get from fossil fuels. So the less rubbish we have that actually converts into methane, and methane CH4 that gets transported into the sky and causing warming, the less of that we have, the cleaner the environment and the less climate change it will have.
Now, it's nice for you to tell us to recycle and clean up our homes and do all of that kind of stuff. But we're at COP21 now for the last 2 weeks, and we're battling the big polluters. The nations are battling to come up with a climate deal. Now, what does it say to us in our individual capacity? What difference can you make if the big polluters are not prepared to sign a deal? And how important is that deal that's on the table?
Sadly, that's a crucial point that you just mentioned there, because we need to see from our leaders and also these big industries and the big polluters, we need to see examples from them so that we can actually follow suit. Because once the big people are actually polluting, then we also feel like we don't have any obligations to not pollute. So it's very crucial, it's very important. I mean, there's about 2 days left to COP21, so it's very crucial that they come to that deal. Carbon pricing, carbon taxing needs to be taken into consideration, and people really need to be punished further. All those countries, those big countries like the United States and the Chinas that are really polluting, they need to lead by example, and they also need to make the biggest pledges to make sure that developing countries, which will eventually be the ones that are affected the most, that they can actually adapt and also be able to contribute to a cleaner environment.
Well, Tsetse, thank you very much for giving us a heads up there. We're all responsible. We all have to build a better tomorrow for our children, their children, and leave the planet in a healthier state. If we can't come to terms with these challenges, well, we'll be the generation to blame. Tsetse Monare is always here to give us his views on the environment, on green issues, and on the climate at large. We'll be back at the top of the next hour with another complete news update. See you then.
And I'm production Chetty Miller, SAB Miller, and Hauser-Busch InBev. It's something that I need to learn to say more often.
Will together produce around a third of the world's beer.
It is a mouthful.
Have you ever considered skin bleaching?
Nigeria tops the list of African countries with 77% of its women bleaching their skin.
Now I can see that it is not good because it affects my face and some of my body parts.
Thousands of Arab Israelis and Palestinians participated in a big rally. Flight MH17 was shot down by a Russian-made missile.
How those chips may fall is a prediction best left to the currency of time.
That's Primetime News, Africa Journal, and Your World on SABC News.
Health Talk, your show on health practice.
The people being empowered with knowledge so that they can change their behavior and reduce their risk of being sick.
How serious is stress at work?
If we don't address workplace stress, that negative stress, then it can lead to burnout and it can lead to depression.
How does absentees affect companies?
The one that's really problematic for employers is the one that is unscheduled.
How can companies organize their wellness program?
Health promotion mustn't just be a one-size-fits-all type of approach. It must be customized based on understanding of the unique needs of that particular organization.
For health tips that will help you to adopt healthy living with Dr. Sillo Mutawung on Health Talk every Saturday.
On Trends, we take you down memory lane with Lionel Richie, who will be touring South Africa next year.
Just saying.
We pick up the best of movies to lead you to a joyous weekend full of action. South African Fashion Week was back with a bang, showing off new designs for 2016. Mikasa's Home Sweet Home album will keep you dancing this festive season. For more entertainment news, join your host Refulo Mula every Friday at 9 p.m.
The act of travel is an eye-opening activity that not only expands your view but is a major part of any country's economy. South Africa's spectacular scenery, friendly people and world-class infrastructure make it one of the most desired destinations in the world. Despite tough global economic conditions, the tourism sector is steadily growing. But the idea that one has to go far in order to explore is quickly changing as the sector encourages local exploration. South Africa's history has been one of confrontation, but is now also known as one of reconciliation. World-class sites have been established to commemorate the country's past and celebrate its newfound unity. An area of tourism that is often overlooked is the question of the arts and tourism. Although many cities have not taken advantage of this element to attract international visitors, the domestic artistic tourism is fast becoming a key drawcard for local exploration. A-grade exhibition centers are creating modern spaces to showcase what makes up the African expression. A good dose of creative capital is playing a major role as entrepreneurs create new and exciting ways to sell their products, thus creating new vibrant local spaces that are changing the face of our communities. South Africa has earmarked tourism as a key sector with excellent potential for growth, and a vast amount is being poured into changing the face of our spaces, making them vibrant, urban, and exciting.
It's 1100 hours Central African time on this Thursday, the 10th of December 2015. This is Newsroom, Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the final hour. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock. You have to stay with us as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. We also are streaming live on YouTube with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. First, let's take a look at all your news headlines. The rand plummets against international currencies after last night's announcement of removing the finance minister Nhlanhla Nene from his portfolio. Sindisiwe Mangele has already instructed her defense team to start preparing for leave to appeal her conviction. A mixed reaction to the final draft of the climate change agreement released at the COP21 conference in Paris last night. Those are some of your headlines, but before we go any further, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what he has in store for us on the sports front. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Elvis. It is the third hour, but the sports is still humdinging as usual. Good morning to you at home as well. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
For their chance again, a shot coming in! Into the back of the net!
South Africa's under-23s were well beaten by organised Algeria, denting their hopes for automatic qualification to the Rio Olympics. Blues advanced to the round of 16 as Group 2 winners with a 2-0 victory over Porto, keeping trouble manager Jose Mourinho in his job.
A goal that surely sends Chelsea through to the knockout stages of the Champions League.
They got it! The Dolphins have done it! Petla
The Cape Cobras blow a sure thing as the Dolphins scrap their way into the Ram Slam T20 final, winning by 5 runs in a thrilling semi last night.
And the ability to not give in by this entire Dolphin side.
That, in a nutshell, is what we've got for you in the sports. Make sure you stick around for that. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. And our top story this morning. The rand plummeted against international currencies after last night's announcement that President Jacob Zuma has removed the finance minister Nhlanhla Nene from his portfolio. The rand broke through the 15 rand a dollar and 23 rand a pound levels. Nene is to be replaced by the ANC MP and whip of the Standing Committee on Finance, David van Rooyen. The president said he had decided to remove Nene as Minister of Finance ahead of his deployment to another strategic position.
I've decided to remove Mr. Nhlanhla Nene as Minister of Finance ahead of his deployment to another strategic position. Mr. Nene has done well since his appointment as Minister of Finance during a difficult economic climate. Mr. Nene enjoys a lot of respect in the sector, locally and abroad, having also served as a Deputy Minister of Finance previously. I've decided to appoint a Member of Parliament, Mr. David van Rooyen, as the new Minister of Finance. Mr. van Rooyen serves as a whip of the Standing Committee on Finance and as whip of the Economic Transformation Cluster. He is a former executive mayor of Merafong Municipality and a former Northwest Provincial Chairperson of the South African Local Government Association. I wish Mr. van Rooyen all the best in this new deployment.
Now, some MPs have reacted to the axing of Nhlanhla Nene, the finance minister. They've questioned the president's decision to appoint David van Rooyen. He is expected to be sworn in this afternoon at 1 o'clock.
David van Rooyen, the new finance minister, served as the whip in the Standing Committee on Finance and in the Economic Transformation Cluster. He is also the former executive mayor of Merafong Municipality and the former chairperson of the South African Local Government Association in the Northwest. Van Rooyen, a former MK operative, boasts among his qualifications an MSc Finance in Economic Policy, which was conferred on him by the University of London last year. Despite this, DA leader Mmusi Maimane said in a statement that the appointment of Van Rooyen gives no assurance that the country's economy is in safe hands. Equally scathing in his reaction was EFF's Mbuyiseli Ndlozi, who described the new finance minister as unknown and inexperienced. The UDM says Van Rooyen has his work cut out for him.
Well, with all due respect to my former colleague in the finance portfolio, we feel that a person who would actually be able to take up that position must first deputize, like what happened with Finance Minister Nene. He hasn't had the opportunity to learn the ropes of how to do the job. So I think he's being set up to actually fail.
Vuyani Green, SABC News, Parliament.
Very much,
Now, as the news reverberate through the markets, we're asking you that question this morning. As on your screen right now, how do you view the sudden replacement of Nhlanhla Nene, the finance minister? Nhlanhla Nene this morning. I would like to get your thoughts on the Facebook page as well as on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. Now, just hours after the president axed the finance minister, President Zuma addressed the newly formed African Business Leaders Forum in Johannesburg. The president told the gathering that it was time for Africans to reclaim their economic freedom.
We need to free ourselves economically. We need to be economically free. Once that happens, it will protect your political freedom and power, therefore. These two go together, political power and economic power. If these two, you hold the political power, they hold the economic power, we are going to dance for their music. They will even tell you laws to make and not to make with your power. So to me, this is absolutely important. I wish Africans could understand where Africans come from and where and why we are here in the form in which we are and where do we need to go. We need to define our destiny ourselves.
At the same gathering, at the newly launched African Business Forum, the mining magnate, Patrice Motsepe, has called on business on the continent to tap into the leadership resources that's available to them.
You need to get some of the most successful African entrepreneurs who've got a track record, who've learned from their challenges, and also who can identify opportunities for us to work together. You must get them involved. People like Alito Dangote, Kuribu from Kenya, various others. And I was suggesting that we should try and get somebody like Aliko to really take leadership of this process and have him as the first chairperson or president of this initiative.
Convicted murderess Ndisiwe Mangele has already instructed her lawyers to prepare an application for leave to appeal her conviction. Yesterday, the High Court sitting in Randburg found that Mangele unlawfully and intentionally killed her hip-hop artist boyfriend, Nkululeko Flaba Habedi. Now, she fatally stabbed Habedi during an apparent violent altercation at his Alexander home in March this year. Mangele is expected to apply for bail today ahead of her sentencing. She spent last night behind bars after being convicted of murdering Habedi by stabbing him in the chest with a steak knife. Further afield, there's been mixed reaction to the final draft of a climate change agreement released at the COP21 conference in Paris last night. Some say it will save the conference from collapsing, while others argue that it will do little to produce a meaningful and legally binding climate change deal by the end of the week.
After days of difficult negotiations and extensive lobbying, the much-anticipated final draft was tabled yesterday afternoon.
In long days, long nights.
Ministers representing almost 200 governments were the first to examine it.
It is generally a good draft. We are at the point consulting other parties because at this stage parties have got to just analyze, consult what the views are of other parties.
Any potential areas of conflict?
No, there are actually three big areas that require quite a lot of work, and those are the cross-cutting areas, the usual one, differentiation, finance, and long-term goals.
It was a busy night for delegates and civil society groups last night, carefully interrogating the draft agreement line by line.
What we would like to strongly see in this agreement is a requirement that all countries will review their current pledges and look at increasing them before it enters into force in 2020. If we do not do that, we lock in the current low levels of ambition for more than 10 to 15 years. That is our biggest problem.
Although the draft has been whittled down from the initial 48 pages to 29, it still contains a lot of unresolved key issues. In fact, some say it falls far short to yield a just climate deal.
And people are dying. People are dying. So we need their support. And when they are looking into the text now, we urge them that they do the right choice. This is our time.
The major disputes still to be resolved are centered on how to finance developing countries to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, what target to set for the limit on rising temperatures, and how the liability of global warming will be shared between rich and poor countries. Time is really of the essence now. There's clearly an urgent need to resolve the outstanding questions. But perhaps the big question is, can they do so over the remaining 2 days of this conference? Tammy Dixon, SABC News in Paris.
Now, SABC's legal team is expected to call forward the last witnesses as they wrap up the disciplinary hearing of the SABC COO, Claudie Motseneng. Our reporter Nhlanhla Khatlani is at the hearing. Nhlanhla, very good morning to you. Can you tell us what is expected to happen at the hearing today? Well, it seems like we haven't gotten Nhlanhla on the line as yet. We'll see if we can get him back. As soon as that happens, we'll go to him live to find out what is currently happening. Meanwhile, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump says he will never leave the 2016 race, despite widespread criticism of his remarks about Muslims. The White House yesterday said that Trump was disqualified from running after he said that the U.S. should ban Muslims from entering the country. His comments came in the wake of a deadly terror attack in California, which drew global condemnation. Trump is the current frontrunner among the Republicans for president, 6 weeks before the primary contests begin for each party to pick their nominee. Meanwhile, former boxing champion Muhammad Ali has joined the chorus in condemning Trump's proposal to temporarily stop Muslims from entering the U.S. Ali says that political leaders should use their positions to bring understanding about Islam. Now, let's go back to our reporter in the field there, as SABC's legal team is expected to call forward the last witnesses as they wrap up the disciplinary hearing of the SABC CEO, Claudia Motsoeneng. But we'll go to him as soon as we come back after the break.
Health Talk, your show on health practice.
The people being empowered with knowledge so that they can change their behavior and reduce their risk of being sick.
How serious is stress at work?
If we don't address workplace stress, that negative stress, then it can lead to burnout and it can lead to depression.
How does absentees affect companies?
The one that's really problematic for employers is the one that is unscheduled.
How can companies organize their wellness program?
Health promotion mustn't just be a one-size-fits-all type of approach. It must be customized based on understanding of the unique needs of that particular organization.
For health tips that will help you to adopt healthy living with Dr. Sillo Mutawung on Health Talk every Saturday.
Well, now we've been trying, let's see if this works now. The SABC's legal team is expected to call forward the last witnesses as they wrap up the disciplinary hearing of the SABC's CEO, Claudia Motsoeneng. Our reporter Nhlanhla Katlani is at the hearing. And Nhlanhla, I hope you can hear us now. Can you tell us what is expected to happen today?
You can hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Well, good day in studio. Today we expect to see the legal representative of the defendants, bringing in their own, or rather their first witness to come and stand. But that can only be determined by the SABC representative to bring their last witness. Earlier on, we spoke to the advocate Pilani, who said that he's likely to ask for postponement as there is a last witness that he would like to bring. But that witness will only be available next month on the 11th. But it surely looks like today it will be his last witness. And the representative of Mr. Claudia Motsoeneng will call in their first witness. We spoke to Mr. Majavu earlier on, and he told us that he only has 3 to call today. And with regards to the witnesses that have stand, it has always the defendants. The defendants say that they are ready to do anything. Their decision will only be determined by what transpired today. And we know that this is the disciplinary hearing of Mr. Claudia Motsoeneng, whereby he's charged with 3 charges: gross misconduct, gross dishonesty, and abuse of power. Yesterday we saw the fourth witness coming to stand before the hearing, being questioned about the charges that are brought against Mr. Motsoeneng. So today we are likely to see the SABC representative concluding their witnesses if they are not granted the postponement by the newly elected chairperson of the hearing.
Are we likely to get an outcome today? Well, it doesn't look like we lost Nhlanhla again there. But thank you for that update, Nhlanhla Katlani. That's our reporter in Bloemfontein. Well, let's now go over to Eben Janssen, who's standing more. But before we go there, farmers, in fact, let's go back to Eben Janssen, who's standing by.
Thank you, Elvis. Is it my turn? Okay, are we going to drought? Farmers in the drought-stricken northwest are in dire straits. Some are now selling their assets to avoid being liquidated. Agri Northwest says the agricultural sector, government and the financial sector have to work together to find a speedy solution.
A severe drought showing no mercy to either man or animal. Farmers first got rid of their livestock. They are now selling equipment and some even their land.
The banks and the agricultural companies will have to look at rescheduling of the debt to see if they can find a way so farmers can pay back their debt over a longer period of time. Otherwise, there will be a liquidation of farmers to a great extent as far as their assets are concerned.
Crop farmers are waiting with bated breath. The planting season has arrived, but thousands of hectares of land are lying fallow. Some have incurred huge losses.
I've been getting less than 15 to 20 tons of sunflower, which is very bad, because for 75 hectares you get over 50 to 60 tons of sunflower, so it has been really, really, really bad.
The drought has already impacted food production.
The report about imports from Grain South Africa is that the net import should be around 300,000 tons for the year. But that could escalate, of course, all depending on what happens in the next 2 weeks.
Food production is further compromised by more farmers quitting. Selotatai, SABC News, Mahikeng.
Now, the Free State Provincial Government will hand over 21 houses to military veterans at Lurie Park in Bloemfontein today. It's part of the government's appreciation, they say, of the role played by all military veterans to bring about democracy. Defence and Military Veterans Minister Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula and Deputy Kebi Mpachwe, Human Settlements Minister Lindiwe Sisulu and Premier Ace Magashule will attend the event there. Now, for more on the festivities, let's go to our specialist correspondent, Richard Newton. Very good morning to you, Richard. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning and welcome to Lurie Park. Here it's incredibly dusty, it's incredibly hot, and it's incredibly windy, but no one here is worried about that, because today it's all about getting homes for veterans and their dependents. And today there's a handing over of 6 of the first 30, which will be done by the end of this month, and everyone here is thrilled to bits. They're all very pleased to get a house. Some people I spoke to said they've been waiting for 20 years and now they have a home, and very exciting day for their dependents. As you can no doubt hear behind me, the politicians are here. We've got a couple of deputy ministers, the Premier, spreading the message of why it's important to give back to the people who have made these sacrifices and to ensure that they have a decent house to live in. In fact, one of the discussions just up now was that the original plan for the houses was 50 square meters, and it was decided in the Free State to double that to 100 square meters. And they say we really have to look after our veterans who have sacrificed so much to get South Africa to where it is today. There is an agreement, yes, it's going to take a long time, but the plan is now to have at least 6,000 new houses for veterans in the next 3 to 4 years. Eben.
Richard, it looks a little bit breezy there today. Tell us about who's attending and what the official program will look like there. Okay, we've lost Richard, it seems like, unfortunately. As you can see, conditions are quite testy in the Free State. A little bit windy there as Richard simply got blown off our screens. But we move on. It seems to be storms all around the world. 2 people have been killed and scores displaced in severe storms in the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands. Disaster management teams have been deployed to the area there.
This is where 8-year-old Gogo Gitas Kakane died. A house collapsed on her.
After the rain had settled, we checked on my grandmother. We tried to wake her up, but she was unresponsive.
A second person died after being hit by lightning on Tuesday night. Heavy downpours damaged schools, clinics and homes.
So many people have been displaced and others injured. Some have moved to neighbors and relatives because their homes are no longer in good condition.
Help has been sent to affected areas.
Other initiative that we are engaged in is that of ensuring that we provide the first-line support, because currently people are in distress, they have been befell by tragedy, so we've got to respond in terms of providing first-line support, emergency support, and then we are also quantifying the damage. We are going to know the full impact as the time goes on.
Residents in thunderstorm-prone areas have been warned to be vigilant as more storms are expected.
As stories are broken around the world, SABC makes sure you do not miss out. As the stories unfold throughout the day, News at 8 updates all newsworthy stories worldwide. Globally, we are there. Locally, we leave no story untold. Make a date with News at 8 every Saturday and Sunday on SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Welcome back to Sports on Newsroom. My name is Kendall Makamate. Now, of late, there's been stories of young athletes doing the rounds that go to other places to ply their trades. We're talking about youngsters that end up playing for the United States of America, for one, and maybe even Germany or England for the other. We've got two guests who are going to be taking us through some of the programs that they work on, and they're the athletes that they've taken through to other parts of the world to ply their trades as sportsmen and women. I would like to welcome Tyrone Peters as well as Julian Dillahunt. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Newsroom.
Good morning. Morning, Ken. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Tyrone, we're going to start with you. Very good, thank you. Tyrone, I'm going to start with you, sir. Yeah. Please give us an outline of the program.
Well, you know, I come from WEC Sport, and we're a sports agency that with three buddies that come together from school. We believe that South Africa has got probably the best, if not up there with the best sportsmen in the world. And we find, especially in rugby, there's a big bottleneck after school. And the guys don't seem to get the opportunity that they require to become professional athletes. And our job is to make sure that they realize that professional sport is a career. It's not just something from the past where, you know, sport's a hobby. Professional sports, if you look at the economy, South Africa's economy is struggling, the world economy is struggling. However, the sports economy grows at 30% a year. Not just for the sportsmen, everything surrounding it as well. So we're trying to encourage the guys to look at this. They've got the skill, they've got the talent. Let's go reach your full potential. And whether it's in South Africa or anywhere in the world, it doesn't bother us at all.
All right, so you're an agency that actually works with young sportsmen and women, and you, from what I hear you saying, you're trying to alleviate the bottleneck that happens after people leave school, for example, and they're trying to get into franchises or clubs or teams or even get into the national side, and they're not able to. Are we talking about people like Kevin Peterson, for example?
Well, definitely. You know, if we look at Kevin Peterson last night, he was instrumental in the Dolphins winning, and when he was 18, 19 years old, wasn't afforded the opportunity that he believed he deserved, and went overseas through help through others, got the opportunity, and showed the world that, well, it was a good 3-4 years where he was the world's best test batsman, and he scored more runs than any other English test cricketer ever in the history of the game.
Yeah, and I'm sure they ruined the fact that he's not a natural-born Englishman. So the question then would be, why are young South African athletes looking to move? Is it literally just because of the bottleneck, or is it because they get better opportunities elsewhere?
I think it's a bit of both. All right, I don't mean to slate anybody in South African administration. However, some of the decisions and selections that are made are not based purely on merit and are not based purely on skill set of the player. This does not necessarily bring in transformation. However, a lot of the times, in my situation, black players are getting, not finding the opportunities that they deserve. And they're seeking other opportunities around the world because they believe that they're good enough to make it. And they are doing that right now.
All right, before we go any further with you and actually get into some of the nitty-gritty of some of the players that you've worked with, I'm going to bring you in, Julian. Julian, we know you very well as a mental coaching specialist, right? If you're from I2R, you're from Waxed Sport. Where is it that you fit into this picture?
So we partnered with Waxed a couple of months ago, and it really made a lot of sense. You're sending these often, kids, sending them on international duty into a foreign environment, far away from mom and dad and all the niceties that went around home. So we then decided that this is really where I2I can play an integral part in providing a support mechanism in terms of setting these guys up for high performance internationally, so that when they get there, they're geared and ready for their international assignment.
All right, cool. And in terms of feedback that you're getting from some of these youngsters that have gone over, have you started getting any of it? I mean, how are they gelling? Are they settling in? Is it taking longer than expected? What are the main challenges that they face?
Yes, I mean, obviously each one is different. Each individual is different depending on their background, depending on personality, behavioral types, etc., etc. I mean, it's typically things like a loneliness. So I've arrived in this new environment. The novelty wears off quite early on, and all of a sudden I'm left on my own. So providing that support mechanism, even if it's just a phone call or a Skype interview or whatever it might be, we do the preparation before the time so that these guys arrive, girls and guys, arrive cross-border and they're in the right mental space. They need to go out there, and often they've only got a small window. They often might have 3 months to prove themselves, or they're shipped out again. So they need to hit the ground running. They need to be tenacious. They need to have the ability to fit in, be flexible around the environment. So we do a lot of the preparation work with them to get them into this environment.
All right, and now back to you, Tyrone. Some people will say that you're facilitating a skills drain on South Africa. Is that accurate?
I would say that's very inaccurate. If you look at the schoolboy system in South Africa, especially when it comes to rugby, we probably have the best schoolboy system in the world when it comes to intensity, physicality, competitiveness. So we're really trying to make sure that these guys in schoolboy rugby, they find opportunities elsewhere. We've got the Varsity Cup, which is now only allowed for students. So if you're not a student and you don't want to study, you can't play Varsity Cup. Right. That was a big thing. So that allows only the Community Cup guys to make sure that's the only opportunity they have is in Community Cup. And you can't afford to make a living off 2,000 Rand a month for a club system. So we look to go elsewhere. And I look at it in another way. It's not really a drain. It's creating more opportunities. A lot of these boys are making that money overseas and bringing it back to their families. And with the Rand struggling as it is right now.
Oh, yeah, it's going to struggle even more after last night's
We're a very attractive commodity. Us, the African sportsmen, are the most attractive commodity in the world, And if you look at... We also got our own political issues when it comes to selecting sides, And these are realities that we must accept, and we must look to move forward instead of fighting it.
All right. Now, one of the things that's quite key for us to get an understanding on is with regards to... the players that you've taken through, you've taken some already through, I suppose.
A couple.
Yeah. Is it just rugby? Is it just cricket? Is there basketball as well? Is there football? Is there swimming? Which codes have you found have been most attractive?
Well, at the moment, our rugby is very attractive. The guys, they have a lot of respect for South African rugby players, and they also understand our situation in our country. A lot of the guys also follow our schoolboy rugby, so they know how massive it is. When it comes to football, not so much, because there is a lot of red tape involved in that, and a lot of our PSL guys have got the soccer players under their thumb, which is good for South African football. And then when it comes to cricket, it's also a very, very big positive. Our cricketers are in big demand around the world, and of all colours. I know there's a lot of black cricketers that I've got overseas at the moment that are doing incredibly well, making really good money, especially with the pound, and coming back and providing for their family and then starting in the club system again.
Okay. How old is this program? How long has it been around for?
Well, we've been going for about, I would say, this year, since about February this year, and our first guy went over in about April this year.
All right, so it kind of like ties in with the most recent announcement of how in the United States they're going pro.
They're going pro, exactly.
Now, everybody's been watching Sevens rugby has noted how the United States has been on the rise over the last couple of years. In fact, they won London last year, the very last tournament at the Sevens Series last year. They beat the All Blacks twice and the Blitzbokke in the same weekend, and they're doing extremely well. Yeah. So you guys are basically facilitating a new superpower on the rugby front.
Well, you could see that in 15s rugby as well. I mean, if you look at the performance of the 15s rugby American team in the World Cup, there are many pundits out there that are saying, hold on to your horses. This is where the world rugby superpower is going.
So if the United States make it in the top 4, I know exactly who they're going.
Well, they're a very professional nation, yes. And everything they do is very professional. And they're a proud nation, and they were actually quite upset about the results in the World Cup with the 15s, because it doesn't match anywhere close to what the 7s are achieving. And now they've stepped it up a year. They've brought their professional season, their professional tournament, the pro rugby, ahead 1 year. It was supposed to start in 2017, and now it's starting in April 2016.
Yeah. And maybe just to give you just from our side, they take the performance and sports psychology as an applied science a lot more serious than many of the other international countries out there. So they're really considering the full Monty, and I think it really stems from their American football background, their basketball. It's all about stats. It's about understanding every single move, every single stat of a player. So, that's a professional era that we've moved into.
And cutting out opinion, making sure it's based on facts and what the boy's achieved and the skill set that he has obtained, yes. And all these results that he's got. It can't be just about what I think.
Right, no, fantastic. Basically, we're sitting on the dawn of a new era, the cusp of new stuff, and I want to thank you very much for actually bringing us into the fold of the thinking behind it, as well as a little bit about the program. We certainly hope that we bring you in more often and even speak to some of the players themselves and see how they do.
Definitely. That would be fantastic. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
No, very good, very good. Tyrone Peters from Wax Sports, as well as Julian Delahunt from I2I, telling us about a new era in world sports. Now, on to other sports news. Teams from the English Premier League did not have the best of starts in this season's UEFA Champions League campaign. However, 3 of the 4 are now through to the knockout stage of the competition.
2 more English teams have joined Manchester City in the last 16 of the Champions League, with only giants Manchester United booted out of the competition. Arsenal, who suffered 2 losses in a row at the beginning of the campaign, emphatically beat Olympiacos 3-0 in their own backyard to march to the knockout stage for the 16th season running.
Giroud on the move, and Giroud's in! Giroud scores again!
French striker Olivier Giroud was the star of the show as he grabbed his first hat-trick for the club to help the Gunners leapfrog their host in Group F.
And Arsenal are surely there.
Chelsea, who are struggling in the home front, collected 3 points against Porto. The Jose Mourinho-led side were looking to appease their fans as they pushed forward in search of an opening goal from the word goal. And early in the second half, Williams' 5th strike of the campaign secured the Blues' progress as Group G winners at the expense of their coach's former
employers. And here's Williams! A goal that surely sends Chelsea through to the knockout stages of the Champions League.
Lionel Messi scored his 80th UEFA Champions League goal in the 20th minute of Barcelona's match against Bayer Leverkusen.
Onside, Messi! Yes! The reward for a superbly timed run from Leo Messi.
But 3 minutes later, Mexican striker Javier Hernandez cancelled out Barca's goal with a left-footed shot from inside the penalty area. Leverkusen dropped to the Europa League along with Olympiacos, Porto and Valencia. On Monday, the knockout phase starts in earnest when the remaining UEFA Champions League hopefuls learn who awaits in the last 16. Mduduzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
And now bringing it back home, the Dolphins secured a place in the Ram Slam T20 Challenge final when they bagged a thrilling 5-run victory of the Cape Cobras at Kingsmead in Durban last night.
Here we go, here we go, here we go. Yes, he's got one.
Andile Petlokwayo was once again the bowling hero at the death for the Dolphins, being given the 18th and 20th overs to take 2 for 7 and also build the pressure that led to the run-out of Justin Ontong.
Oh, that could be gone. That is a good piece of fielding from Miller in the deep at long off. Ontong's not even waiting around. They got it. The Dolphins have done it. Petlokwayo has done the impossible.
With Cobras' Richard Levy blitzing 85 from just 43 balls, the Cobras went into the last 5 overs of their chase needing just a run a ball with 7 wickets in hand to win the playoff, but were unable to cross the line. Right, that's where we leave it with the sports. Now back to Elvis Presley.
Thank you, Mr. Mokamate. Now, earlier this week, we were joined by Dr. Darren Green and Garen Gazzelli to talk about mental illness. Eben Janssen asked him about depression being often dismissed as a mood swing, and here's what he had to say.
It's a reality facing men in this country. You know, you mentioned some of the statistics, but also South Africa having the 8th highest suicide rate in the world. There are some real issues that certainly it shouldn't be something just swept under the carpet or just thought to be someone being moody. There could be real issues at play.
If I can go to Dr. Green. Dr. Green, just tell us quickly, what are the dangers associated with untreated depression?
Yes, I think people don't recognize the early warning signs, so they progress then to affect their functioning on a day-to-day level. So what actually happens is it spills over into your social life, into your work life, and then, of course, into your physical being and body as well. We can't separate emotion from your physical well-being. So the effects on your health can be devastating when it comes to carrying stress, etc., and not having an outlet to do that. So you can imagine the effects on the cardiac system, things like heart disease and stroke, etc. But along with that, the long-term effects of a depressed mood and how that causes behavioral changes in families with dads, for example, irritability, not approachable, aggressive behavior, and eventually even then isolation. So the effects are quite dire for our society, I must say.
Garen, we're ranked 8th in the world when it comes to suicide, which tells me that we have a problem with masculinity, and that problem being that we don't reach out and seek help because it's not the tough guy thing to do, is it?
Exactly. You know, just the way that moustache became the catalyst for the conversation around prostate and testicular cancer and around male health issues, you know, we realized that men that were suffering with prostate and testicular cancer were often suffering with depression as well. A lot of Mobros that had been suffering with those diseases ultimately taking their lives, which put a spotlight on it for us, you know, and with our new ambition of men living happier, healthier and longer lives, it made sense for us to start focusing on mental health and starting to get men to talk about those issues. And it certainly isn't demasculine to identify with your issues from a mental health perspective or with a physical health perspective.
Correct.
I want to ask Dr. Green there quickly to tell us, what are some of the factors that lead to depression, and then what are the symptoms that you should be looking out for as even a young man?
Yeah, sure. So we use what's called a biopsychosocial model. So biologically, you can even be born with an inherent shortage of the feel-good hormones like serotonin, for example, on a biological level. So genetically, you could be predisposed to depression as well. And then, of course, on a psychological level, emotional stresses, you can imagine the workplace, things like big changes in your lives, changing your job, changing your home, financial stresses. I mean, all those are part of every household at the moment. And then obviously the other thing that is involved is the inability to express and deal and coping with it. And that's what we need to learn to do. I think people see it as a weakness and then tend to turn to crutches like substance abuse, etc., in coping with their depression instead of hitting it head on and actually dealing with the issue at hand.
Yeah, that's it's so common when you look around South Africa. Before we talk about how it affects South Africa, Dr. Green, I'm going to go back to Garen. And Garen, just talk about stigma for us, you know, because, you know, this whole thing can be quite stigmatized. As a man, I went through it last year. I went to go see a therapist, and you know, all your mates tell you you're crazy, you know, and that sort of thing. How do we mystify this, or how do we destigmatize this thing?
So I think, from the Movember Foundation's perspective, we've got a big move to change the language surrounding depression, and using words like committing suicide is almost as if committing a crime. We need to really remove that and look at the language that we use, and just again, like the fact that you can openly talk about it. It's a health issue. It's really being able to share what you're going through with people and getting them to understand it. It's actually it's a human thing. It's human nature.
Yeah, it's a human thing, but Dr. Green, when I look around South Africa at the kinds of crime that's being committed in our country, some of them so heinous you can't even get your head around it. Grown men raping 5-year-olds, people being cut up, heads chopped off, all kinds of stuff that's almost an aberration if you look at it from the outside. But is this pointed to the level or the high level of untreated mental illness that we have on our streets?
Yes, and I think definitely one cannot but take it very seriously. You can't ignore the effects of a sick community, and certainly untreated depression and the lack of addressing things like mental health issues, particularly in our fathers, our providers, our protectors in our community, all contribute towards things like crime, aggression, violence and anger-related issues in our communities. So certainly that would be the aftermath of the spillover of not hitting at the root of the problem. So I think, exposing it through the Movember and Men's Health campaign is absolutely magnificent in trying to do that and get the message out and make it okay to actually start talking about feelings, because men actually do feel.
Yeah, but we don't talk about it, not even to our mates, Dr. Green. Just tell me, I want to talk about this time of the year because it's festive season and we're all very happy and jolly and we all have that extra drink and so forth. But this is a time of the year when men are probably more depressed than at any other time during the year. It's probably a sort of red zone, if one can call it that. How do you deal with that as a man this time of year?
Yeah, in rushing towards the end of the year deadlines and closing up work and closing up shop, you can imagine all the different industries. Everyone is pressed beyond belief, and your coping mechanisms then start to just diminish to nothing. You've got expectations from your family. The kids are at home. They're no longer at school. Your family are basically on the back burner of not seeing you for so much of this festive season anyway, that people are faced with the greatest decision as to how long can they actually afford to take off work rather than what length of holiday do they actually need. So at this time of the year, men turn to things like alcohol, as you rightfully said, to drown their sorrows, which is only a temporary way of dealing with the problem. And certainly the next step after that is often isolation, where when you can't talk to someone and you refuse to verbalize it, it then gets bottled up and often then leads to the direst consequences like suicide.
Dr. Green, thank you very much. I just want to ask Garen to just wrap it up for us. Garen, if you're feeling a little bit down now, you want to have that extra drink, you're feeling a bit grumpy, what should you do as a man? Who should you be reaching out for at this time of the year? Where can men go to?
Well, certainly the first thing is to remember that you're not alone. I think one of the most important things is that isolation that Darren was talking about. You often feel that you're the only one that's going through it, but there are people that are there to help. There are people that are willing to listen. SADAG have got those helplines that will be operating through the festive season as well. So certainly reach out and have those conversations. And most importantly, just recognize that it is not it's not inhumane. It is not demasculine to be able to talk about your feelings and the fact that you are going through a challenging time. It's a matter of fact. It's a symbol of strength to actually show vulnerability, being able to talk about your issues.
That's the secret, is vulnerability, Garen. That's what my therapist told me. Got to deal with vulnerability, because we all live in this narcissistic world in a way where vulnerability is a weakness. It isn't. It's an absolute strength. And I think on a closing note, guys, thank you for joining us today. But we're all struggling, aren't we?
We're living it.
We're all dealing with it in different ways. So just need to talk about it more.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for joining us. That's Garen Giselle. He's the Movember country manager, and Dr. Darren Green. He's a multimedia medical expert, talking about mental health, specifically with regards to men at this time of the year. It's difficult. We're all struggling. You might look at me and think, oh, I've got my stuff together. I have my moments where I don't, and it's okay. And it's okay to talk about it.
It's about that time of the year when you talk about these things to your mates and to your family, if you're going through those type of emotions. But there we got to leave it. I think we've run out of time, Kendall.
Absolutely.
For today.
Yeah,
we'll be back same time, same place tomorrow right here on Newsroom. And Eben will also be back. We'll see you then. Ciao for now from myself, Elvis Preslin.
And me, Kendall Makhamati.
See you then.
Bye-bye.
The son of Africa, Trevor Noah, is leaving America in stitches.
I never dreamed that I would one day have, well, two things really. An indoor toilet and a job as host of The Daily Show.
We are the first to bring you the latest films around the globe.
Dear white people, the minimum requirement of black friends needed to not seem racist has just been raised to 2.